Aren't you away?
The inspection was canceled. Were you in my bedroom? It's complicated.
Does that look like your signature?
It looks like mine.
Were you in Columbus that day?
I was in Chicago.
Then don't confront her yet.
Roger Berry was 42, a commercial building inspector in Columbus, Ohio. To everyone around him, he was painfully predictable. Kimberly, his wife of 11 years, believed it most. He drove an 8-year-old Ford Explorer, bought work shirts on sale, and filed every receipt by date. What Kimberly didn't know was that Roger's quiet habits had protected far more than she realized. At 9:17 that night, his canceled Pittsburgh inspection brought him home 30 hours early. Kimberly froze in the living room. "Aren't you away?" Then their bedroom door opened upstairs. A man stepped out adjusting his cuff. Roger recognized him. Before we continue, tell me in the comments what country you're watching from and what time it is there right now. And if you enjoy stories where patience, evidence, and one unexpected moment can change everything, subscribe to the channel. Because what Roger did next was nothing like Kimberly expected. The man at the top of the stairs stopped with one hand still at his cuff. For 3 seconds, nobody spoke. Roger heard the refrigerator humming behind him. The air conditioner clicked off. Somewhere outside, tires hissed across wet pavement. Then recognition arrived. Jason Whitmore. Roger had met him 6 months earlier at a fundraising dinner at the Hilton Columbus downtown. Kimberly had introduced Jason beside the bar with a casual wave. "Jason Whitmore. We cross paths through work sometimes." Jason had shaken Roger's hand and smiled. Regional sales director? Medical equipment? Dublin office? That was what Roger remembered. Now Jason was standing outside Roger's bedroom. His white dress shirt was untucked at one side. Kimberly moved first. "Roger, listen." Roger looked at her. She was barefoot. Her hair was slightly disordered. A wine glass sat on the coffee table. Then his eyes moved through the room. Not because he was trying to build a case, because looking at objects was easier than looking at his wife. There were 2 glasses. The second stood near the edge of the kitchen island. A bottle of Cabernet was open beside them, a dark ring of wine around the neck. A charcoal sport coat had been folded over one of the dining chairs. Roger knew it wasn't his. Near the bottom of the staircase sat a pair of brown leather shoes, size 11 or 12. His own shoes were upstairs in the closet. Beside the fruit bowl were BMW keys. Every object seemed strangely sharp. He could see the condensation beneath one glass. He could smell Kimberly's vanilla candle mixed with wine and something unfamiliar. Men's cologne. "Roger." Kimberly stepped toward him. "This is not what you think." Roger finally looked back at Jason. Jason had come down 3 stairs. He stopped there. Roger's right hand was still wrapped around his Ford key fob. The metal edge had pressed a deep line into his palm. He loosened his grip. "Were you in my bedroom?" Roger asked. Jason glanced toward Kimberly. That glance answered more than words could. "Roger, man, I think we should all just calm down." Roger's expression did not change. "I asked you a question." Jason swallowed. "It's complicated." Roger nodded once. Not because he accepted the answer, because he had heard enough. Jason descended the remaining stairs. Kimberly moved between the 2 men as though expecting Roger to swing. He didn't. Jason was perhaps 2 inches taller than Roger and several years younger. His shoulders filled the expensive white shirt. Roger noticed all of that without caring about any of it. There was nothing Jason could say that would make the second wine glass disappear. Jason reached for his shoes. "I should go." Roger stepped aside from the front door. Kimberly stared at him. "Roger." He opened the door. Jason put on his shoes without tying them properly, grabbed his sport coat and BMW keys, then walked outside. At the threshold, he stopped. "Look, I'm sorry." Roger held the door. Jason left. A black BMW backed out of the driveway less than a minute later. Roger closed the door. Kimberly immediately said, "You have to let me explain." Roger turned. Okay. The word seemed to confuse her. She had prepared herself for shouting, accusations, maybe broken furniture. Roger gave her none of it. Kimberly crossed her arms. Jason came over because we needed to talk. Roger looked toward the staircase. In our bedroom, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. What wasn't? She exhaled sharply. You're twisting everything. Roger stared at her for a moment. He had inspected buildings after fires. He had walked through warehouses where owners insisted a damaged beam was cosmetic, while the steel itself told a different story. Facts rarely raised their voices. They simply remained where they were. Kimberly continued. You weren't supposed to be home until Thursday. Roger caught that sentence. Not you came home early. Not I made a terrible mistake. You weren't supposed to be home. The inspection was postponed, he said, and you couldn't call. There it was. Roger felt something inside him become very still. Kimberly was angry that he had not warned her. He looked at the 2 wine glasses again. No, he said. Apparently I couldn't. He walked toward the garage. Where are you going? Roger took an overnight bag from a shelf. Roger. He returned upstairs. Kimberly followed him, but remained outside the bedroom. The bed was unmade. Roger stopped at the doorway. He did not need to inspect it. He opened the hall closet instead, and collected enough clothes for several days. Then medication from the bathroom cabinet, his laptop charger, toiletries. From the small office downstairs, he took a portable hard drive and a gray accordion folder containing insurance documents, tax records, vehicle titles, and several older property papers. Kimberly watched. You're being ridiculous. Roger placed the folder in his bag. I'm leaving for tonight, so that's it. 11 years, and you just walk out. He zipped the bag. He nearly answered. Instead, he pulled out his phone. In the common areas of the house, he photographed what remained, exactly as he found it. The 2 glasses bottle jacket indentation on the chair, and the time displayed on the kitchen oven. 9:34 p.m. Kimberly stared at him. Are you seriously taking pictures? Yes. Why? Roger slipped the phone into his pocket. Because tomorrow I want to remember tonight, accurately. Her face tightened. You're trying to make me look guilty. Roger lifted his bag. I don't need to make tonight look like anything. That silenced the room. He walked toward the front door. Kimberly followed. Where are you going? Somewhere I can think. Are you going to a lawyer? Roger paused. Until she asked, he had not been thinking about lawyers. Now he was. I'm going to a hotel. He left. The rain had stopped. Roger drove north toward Polaris with the radio off. His hand stayed at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. At every traffic light, images returned without permission. Jason on the stairs, Kimberly barefoot, 2 glasses. You weren't supposed to be home. Roger checked into the Hyatt place near Polaris Parkway, room 417. He set his bag on the luggage rack and sat on the edge of the bed. For several minutes, he did nothing. Then his phone vibrated. 9 missed calls from Kimberly, 14 messages. Roger read none of them. At 11:08 p.m., he opened his laptop. He did not search Jason Whitmore on Facebook. He did not open LinkedIn. He did not try to discover how many photographs existed of Jason and Kimberly together. There would be time for questions. First, Roger wanted to know what had happened inside his own life. He logged into their primary checking account. Nothing obvious. Then savings. Then the account connected to their mortgage. Roger had always handled the household budget conservatively. Kimberly paid certain bills. He paid others. They both had access to the shared accounts. Years earlier, when they refinanced the Worthington house, a home equity line of credit had been established. Roger remembered the amount. He also remembered telling Kimberly they should leave it untouched unless they had a genuine emergency or major planned expense. As far as Roger knew they had. The balance should have been 0. It wasn't. He leaned closer to the screen. Roger opened the transaction history. One withdrawal appeared near the top. $4,850. He frowned. He checked the date. Then another page. Another transaction. Roger reached for the hotel notepad beside the telephone. He wrote the first number down carefully. $4,850. For the first time since walking into the living room, the man coming out of his bedroom stopped being Roger's biggest problem. Roger stared at the $4,850 withdrawal until the numbers stopped looking like money and started looking like evidence. The transaction had been made 11 months earlier. He clicked it. Home equity advance. Roger leaned back in the hotel chair. He remembered opening the line of credit when he and Kimberly refinanced the Worthington house. The bank had offered favorable terms, and Roger had accepted it as a backup source of liquidity. Not spending money, not vacation money, emergency money. The available credit had sat untouched for years, or Roger had believed it had. He opened the full account history. The first withdrawal wasn't $4,850. It was simply the most recent one. Roger scrolled backward. Another appeared 3 months earlier, $200. He wrote it on the Hyatt notepad. Then another. $7,600. Roger stopped. He opened the transaction details. The funds had been transferred electronically. He copied the date. Another withdrawal appeared 5 weeks later, $3,950. Then $1,800. Then $6,200. Some amounts moved directly from the credit line. Others passed through their joint checking account before disappearing through transfers Roger did not recognize. He opened a spreadsheet. Date, amount, source, destination, reference number. Roger created 5 columns. His breathing had changed. He noticed it only because the hotel room was so quiet. He forced himself to slow down. At work, assumptions caused mistakes. A building owner might point to a crack running across drywall and say foundation failure. A contractor might blame settling. An engineer might suspect moisture. Roger's job was not to choose the explanation he liked. He measured, he photographed, he checked load paths, he reviewed construction records. Then he decided what the evidence supported. Tonight would be no different. He downloaded every statement available through the banking portal. 14 months, then 24. Roger created a folder on his laptop. He named it with the date. Nothing dramatic, nothing mentioning Kimberly, nothing mentioning Jason, just the date. Inside it, he created subfolders for checking savings mortgage and HELOC. By 12:03 a.m., the total of the transactions he could not immediately explain had crossed $31,000. Roger sat still. $31,000. He thought through every significant household expense from the previous year. New water heater, $1,740. Property taxes, expected. Roof repair after a spring storm. Insurance had covered most of it. Kimberly's car needed brakes, less than $1,000. Nothing explained $31,000. Roger checked their credit card accounts. One payment stood out. $2,475. It had been sent to a card ending in 4419. Roger knew his cards. None ended in 4419. He searched backward. There were more payments. $875 or $1,300. $2,475. The same 4 digits. Roger wrote them down. His phone vibrated across the desk. Kimberly. He watched it ring. It stopped. A message appeared. Please answer me. 30 seconds later, another. We need to talk before you start making assumptions. Roger read that one twice. Assumptions. He looked at the spreadsheet. He still had no idea whether any of the money had anything to do with Jason. That mattered. He would not combine 2 facts simply because they had appeared on the same night. Jason had been in his house. The credit line had been used. Those were facts. Everything connecting them was still unknown. Another message appeared. Jason and I made a terrible mistake. Roger's jaw tightened. He set the phone face down. Another vibration. It hasn't been what you think. Roger did not answer. At 12:41 a.m., He copied the files to his portable hard drive. Then he emailed several statements to a private email account Kimberly did not use. He did not delete anything from the shared accounts. He did not move money. He did not change access. He simply preserved what already existed. At 1:12 a.m., Roger finally closed the laptop. Sleep came in pieces. He woke at 3:26, again at 4:51. At 6:15 he stopped trying. He showered, dressed in the same navy chinos he had packed the night before, and went downstairs for coffee. His phone showed 23 messages. Roger read them in order. The tone changed gradually. "Please come home. I can explain. It was stupid. Jason doesn't mean what you think he means. You haven't exactly been present in this marriage either. Then you can't just leave. Then ignoring me is cruel." The final message had arrived at 5:38 a.m. "If you cared about 11 years of marriage, you'd talk to me before involving anyone else." Roger took a slow drink of coffee. Yesterday, that sentence might have worked. This morning, it didn't. At 7:45, he searched for family law attorneys in Central Ohio. He did not choose the first advertisement. Roger read biographies, practice areas, and professional histories. One name appeared repeatedly: Amanda Collins, 47, partner at Collins, Harper & Lane in downtown Columbus. 20 years handling divorce complex property division and business valuations. Roger called when the office opened. By 10:30, he was sitting across from her on the 9th floor of an office building overlooking South High Street. Amanda had a yellow legal pad in front of her. Roger told the story once. He started with Pittsburgh. He gave times. He described coming home at 9:17. He described Kimberly's words. He described Jason. Then he described the accounts. Amanda interrupted only to clarify dates. When Roger finished, she looked at the documents he had printed at the hotel business center. "You did all of this last night. I downloaded statements. You move any money? No. Close accounts? No. Change the locks? No. Threaten either of them? No. Post anything online? No." Amanda nodded. "Good." Roger waited. She folded her hands over the legal pad. "From this point forward, don't improvise." Roger said nothing. "Don't empty joint accounts because you're angry. Don't destroy property. Don't throw Kimberly's belongings outside. Don't contact Jason's employer. Don't threaten him. Don't start recording conversations without understanding the legal implications. And don't assume infidelity automatically decides property issues." "I don't. Good. Because it doesn't." Roger slid the printed HELOC statements toward her. "This is what concerns me now." Amanda examined the first page, then the second. "How much? Just over $31,000 that I can't explain yet. Does Kimberly normally handle these accounts? She has access. We both do. Did you authorize these advances? Could you have signed something establishing access to the line when it was opened?" "Yes. That's why I'm not saying she did anything illegal." Amanda looked up. That was the first moment Roger felt she was evaluating him, rather than the paperwork. That's a useful distinction. Roger nodded. "I want to know what happened. Not punish Kimberly. Not destroy Jason. Know what happened." Amanda returned to the statements. "Do you have tax returns?" "Yes." "Mortgage records?" "Yes." "Closing documents from when you purchased the house?" "Probably." Bank statements showing the original down payment, Roger thought. "I should." "How far back, 12 years?" Amanda raised an eyebrow. Roger almost smiled. "I keep paperwork, so I'm noticing." His phone vibrated. Kimberly again. Roger silenced it. Amanda wrote something. "How long have you been married?" 11 years. "Any children? No. Business interests a minority interest through my inspection firm. Retirement accounts? Yes. Brokerage? Yes. Kimberly 401k. Some company stock." Amanda continued making notes. Then she reached the section on real estate. Current estimated value of the house somewhere around $690,000. Mortgage balance. Roger gave her the approximate figure. Amanda wrote it down. "Now let's talk about how you acquired it." Roger paused. That required going further back, before Kimberly, before the wedding, before the house became theirs in every ordinary sense of the word. Roger's father had owned a small piece of undeveloped land outside Delaware, Ohio. When his father downsized, part of that property was sold. Roger received a portion of the proceeds before marrying Kimberly. He had used much of it toward the house. His father had insisted on one thing: keep the records. Roger had. Wire confirmations, sale documents, deposit records, closing statement. At the time, Roger had thought his father's caution excessive. Now Amanda stopped writing. How much of the down payment came from those proceeds, Roger told her. Can you prove the source? I think so. Think or no, Roger considered the gray accordion folder sitting in his hotel room. I know. Amanda nodded. That matters. Roger looked through the window toward downtown Columbus. Traffic moved below them as if nothing had happened. Yesterday morning he had been driving toward Pittsburgh thinking about concrete fire barriers and inspection deadlines. 24 hours later he was discussing the financial anatomy of his marriage with a divorce attorney. Amanda turned to a clean page. One more thing. Roger looked back. The Worthington property. Yes. She tapped her pen once against the paper. I don't want you assuming anything about ownership until I review the documents. Source of funds matters. Contributions during the marriage matter. The mortgage history matters. Title matters. The exact paperwork matters. I understand. Good. She paused. Then asked the question Roger had not expected. Roger, whose name is actually on the deed, Roger knew the answer. My name. Amanda Collins stopped tapping her pen. Only yours. On the original deed, yes. Original, Roger nodded. I bought the house 7 months before Kimberly and I got married. Amanda wrote that down. Has the deed been changed since? Not that I know of. Don't rely on memory. We'll verify it. Roger understood. That phrase had become the rule of the morning. Don't assume, verify. The house on Ashbourne Drive had never felt like Roger's property alone. He had purchased it at 30. A 4-bedroom brick colonial in Worthington with a narrow backyard, unfinished basement, and an oak tree that dropped enough leaves every October to fill 20 lawn bags. Purchase price $372,000. Roger had put down $112,000. Most of that money had come from property his father, Walter Berry, had owned north of Columbus. The land wasn't an inheritance. Walter was still alive when it was sold. He had purchased 12 undeveloped acres decades earlier when Delaware County looked very different. As development moved north, the value rose. Walter eventually sold part of it and distributed some proceeds to Roger and Roger's sister, Megan. Roger had received his share before marrying Kimberly. Walter had insisted on documenting everything. At the time, Roger had laughed. Dad, I'm buying a house, not preparing for trial. Walter had looked over his glasses. You're preparing for life. Keep the paper. So, Roger had. The land sale statement. Bank deposit. Wire confirmation, purchase contract, closing disclosure. Every page had gone into a folder. 7 months later, Roger married Kimberly. Within a year, the house became theirs in every way that mattered emotionally. Kimberly chose new kitchen cabinets. Roger built shelves in the garage. They replaced the upstairs carpet. They hosted Thanksgiving. They argued over paint colors. They refinanced. They paid expenses from marital income. Roger never walked through the front door thinking, this is my house. Until now, he had never needed to separate memory from ownership. Amanda closed the yellow pad. I'm going to say something important. Roger waited. Your name being on the deed doesn't mean you automatically walk away with everything. I understand. The fact that you bought it before marriage matters. The source of the down payment may matter, but so do 11 years of mortgage payments, improvements, refinancing, appreciation, and whatever happened to the title during that period. Roger nodded. I don't want something that isn't mine. Amanda studied him. What do you want the numbers to be right? That answer came easily. Roger didn't know yet whether he wanted the house. He didn't know whether he wanted to sell it. He barely knew where he would sleep the following week. But he knew one thing. He did not want Kimberly deciding reality by repeating a version of it loudly enough. Amanda asked him to bring every real estate document he could locate. Roger returned to the hotel shortly after noon. The gray accordion folder was on the desk where he had left it. He opened it. Insurance, tax records, old mortgage statements, vehicle titles. At the back was a thick envelope labeled Ashbourne. Roger emptied it onto the bed. There it was, the closing statement from 12 years earlier. He found the purchase price, the down payment, the wire amount, then the bank statement showing where the money had entered his account after the land sale. Roger arranged the pages chronologically. He photographed each one. Then he found the refinancing package. That took longer. By 2:40 p.m., the hotel bed was covered with paper. His phone vibrated twice. Kimberly. Roger ignored it. He found the HELOC documents inside a blue folder. The credit line had been established 4 years earlier during refinancing. Roger remembered sitting at a conference table beside Kimberly while a loan officer moved yellow tabs from page to page. Sign, initial, date, sign, initial, date. There had been dozens of pages. That bothered him now. How many authorizations had he signed without remembering their exact language? Roger did not pretend memory was evidence. He began reading. The original line of credit was legitimate. His signature was there. So was Kimberly's on documents requiring hers. The account itself wasn't the problem. The unexplained advances were. Roger opened the online portal again and compared transaction dates against the documents. One entry included a reference to an authorization form. He requested available supporting records through the bank's secure message center. Then he waited. At 3:17 p.m., Kimberly called again. This time Roger answered. Hello? Silence. Then Kimberly said finally. Roger looked at the papers spread across the bed. What do you need? What do I need? Her voice sharpened. You disappear for almost a day, won't answer me, and that's what you ask. I told you I was going to a hotel. You walked out. Roger said nothing. Kimberly continued. Jason is not some secret boyfriend I've been planning a life with. Roger stared at the HELOC statement. How long what? You and Jason? Kimberly hesitated. We should talk about that in person. How long it isn't that simple. Roger wrote the time of the call on his notepad. 3:18 p.m. Then we'll discuss it later. Roger, don't do this. Do what? Turn into some cold investigator. Roger's eyes moved over the paperwork. You had another man in our bedroom. I know what happened. Good. You're acting like I committed a crime. Roger stopped. There it was. A sentence that would have meant nothing yesterday. Now it landed differently. He looked at the HELOC records. I didn't say you committed a crime. Kimberly went quiet. Roger waited. When she spoke again, her tone had changed. I didn't mean it literally. Okay, Roger, I have to go. Are you meeting with a lawyer? He did not answer. Kimberly exhaled. I knew it. The call ended 30 seconds later. Roger placed his phone beside the laptop. He replayed nothing. He interpreted nothing. He returned to the documents. At 4:06 p.m., the bank sent a secure response. Supporting records were available for several advances. Roger downloaded the first PDF, then the second. The third included an electronic authorization. Roger opened it. His name appeared on the form, Roger M. Berry. He checked the transaction date, April 16th. Something about it bothered him. Roger opened his work calendar, April 16th. He stared. Indianapolis. The memory came back immediately. A 4-story mixed-use development near Massachusetts Avenue. 2-day inspection. He had driven west early on April 15th and returned late on April 17th after a follow-up meeting. Roger searched his company email. Hotel confirmation, Indianapolis Marriott downtown. Check-in April 15th. Check-out April 17th. He found the expense report. Parking charge. Meal receipt. Mileage reimbursement. Then he looked again at the authorization. But timestamp April 16th. 2:43 p.m. Roger's skin went cold. The document didn't merely list his name, it indicated electronic execution connected to the transaction. Roger did not know exactly what that proved. Maybe authorization had been established earlier. Maybe remote signing was possible. Maybe there was an explanation buried in the lender's process. He refused to leap beyond the document. But one fact was solid. At 2:43 p.m. on April 16th, Roger Berry had been more than 170 miles from his house. He called Amanda. She answered after 2 rings. Collins. I found something. What Roger explained the authorization, then Indianapolis. Amanda became very quiet. Send me the document. Roger emailed it. He heard keyboard clicks through the phone. Now send the hotel record and anything showing where you were. Roger did. Another silence. Roger. Yes, don't call Kimberly about this. I wasn't going to. Don't ask her about the signature. Don't send her a screenshot. Don't tell her what you found. Roger looked at his own name on the document. What do you think happened? I don't know yet. The answer reassured him more than certainty would have. Amanda continued. And neither do you. Roger nodded, even though she couldn't see him. We verify first, yes. She asked him to preserve the original downloads and avoid altering file names or metadata. Roger copied everything to his external drive. Then another copy to secure storage. When the call ended, the room was silent again. Outside the window, afternoon traffic moved along Polaris Parkway. Roger looked at the authorization. 24 hours earlier, his problem had been a man walking out of his bedroom. Now another man mattered less. The question was no longer only who Kimberly had allowed into their marriage. It was what had been done inside Roger's financial life while he wasn't looking. His phone lit up. A text from Kimberly. Are you coming home tonight? Roger looked at it. Then at the April 16th authorization. He didn't reply. 5 minutes later, Amanda called again. Her voice was sharper this time. I've reviewed what you sent. Roger waited. There are several possibilities, and we're not choosing one without evidence. Understood. But from now on, I want you to be very careful about what you reveal. Roger looked down at the signature bearing his name. Amanda finished with 6 words. Do not confront her about this yet. Roger did not sleep much that night either. By 6:40 the next morning, he was sitting at the small desk in room 417, with black coffee cooling beside his laptop. The April 16th authorization remained open on the screen. He had looked at it enough. Now he needed distance from it. Amanda had given him a list of practical steps. Nothing dramatic. Nothing designed to punish Kimberly. Protect access. Preserve records. Document balances. Do not interfere with disputed marital property. Roger followed the list exactly. He changed the password to his personal email account first, then his cloud storage, then the online account connected to his employer's benefits. 2-factor authentication went on everywhere it was available. For years, Kimberly had known some of Roger's passwords simply because marriage had made convenience seem harmless. That assumption was over. Roger did not lock Kimberly out of accounts that belonged to both of them. He did not transfer their savings. He did not touch the disputed HELOC. Instead, following Amanda's instructions, he arranged for future payroll deposits to go into an individual account. Then he downloaded screenshots showing current balances in every shared account. Date, time, amount. Roger saved each one. At 8:12, he requested copies of his credit reports. The first looked normal. Mortgage, 2 credit cards. Auto loan already paid off. The second showed something he did not recognize. Roger leaned closer. A revolving credit account, opened 13 months earlier. The balance was modest compared with the HELOC, but the account itself bothered him. He checked the last 4 digits. Roger reached for his notebook. He flipped back 3 pages. There it was, the unidentified card that had received payments from their joint checking account, ending in 4419. He placed the notebook beside the laptop. For several seconds, he simply compared the numbers. Same account. Roger printed the relevant page at the hotel business center. Then he called Amanda. She listened. "Don't contact the creditor yet, unless we coordinate it," she said. "I want to understand exactly how it was opened and whose obligation it is." "Understood. Anything else?" "Not yet. Keep it that way if you can." Roger almost laughed. Nothing about the previous 48 hours suggested life intended to cooperate. At 9:30, he drove to work. His supervisor, Mark Ellison, knew only that Roger's Pittsburgh assignment had been postponed. Roger did not tell him about Kimberly. There was no reason. He spent the morning reviewing fire separation plans for a warehouse expansion in Grove City. Numbers helped, measurements helped, steel thickness, wall ratings, exit distances, things that could be verified. At 12:18, Kimberly texted, "I need some clothes from the dry cleaner. Are you coming home at all?" Roger stared at the message. Home. The word had become strangely technical. He replied, "I'll come by at 6 to get additional belongings." Her response arrived almost immediately. "We need to talk," Roger typed. "We can talk briefly." He sent it before he could reconsider. At 5:57 p.m., the Ford Explorer turned onto Ashbourne Drive. Roger parked in his own driveway. Kimberly's Lexus was already there. He sat behind the wheel for several seconds. The upstairs curtains were closed. Everything looked ordinary. A neighbor was trimming shrubs 2 houses down. A UPS truck rolled past. Roger entered with his key. Kimberly was waiting in the kitchen. No wine this time. She wore jeans and a gray sweater. Roger placed an empty duffel bag near the stairs. "You actually came," she said. "I said I would." Kimberly folded her arms. "Are you staying, no?" Her jaw tightened. "Roger, this is insane." He looked at her. "Which part, you living in a hotel? Not answering calls? Treating me like I'm some criminal?" Roger noticed the word again. Criminal. He gave no reaction. "I came for clothes." Kimberly stepped between him and the staircase. Jason meant nothing. Roger waited. "It happened," she continued. "I'm not denying that. I made a terrible decision, a decision. You know what I mean." Roger looked toward the stairs. He could still see Jason standing there in his mind. White shirt, untucked, hand at his cuff. "How long?" Roger asked. Kimberly looked away. Roger did not repeat himself immediately. Then he said how long it wasn't some long-term affair. That wasn't the question. "A few months. How many I don't know?" Roger watched her. "You don't know how many months? Why does the exact number matter?" Roger said nothing. Kimberly shook her head. "This is exactly what you do. What you turn everything into an inspection report," Roger almost answered. Instead, he stepped around her and went upstairs. The bedroom had been cleaned. The sheets were different. The wineglasses were gone. Roger opened his closet. He selected shirts, 2 pairs of pants, underwear, socks, and another jacket. Kimberly stood in the doorway. "You've barely looked at me." Roger folded a shirt. "What would you like me to see?" She went silent. Roger zipped the bag. On his way downstairs, Kimberly followed him. "I said I'm sorry, I heard you. So what happens now, I don't know. Are you divorcing me?" Roger stopped beside the front door. 48 hours earlier, he might have thought that question required an immediate answer. Now he understood something different. Not knowing was not weakness. It was simply the truth. "I haven't decided what happens next." Kimberly stared at him. "Have you talked to a lawyer?" Roger opened the door. "Good night, Kimberly." She grabbed the edge of the door before he could close it. "Roger." He looked back. Her voice softened. "I don't love Jason." Roger felt the sentence land somewhere deep, but it did not change the facts. He asked one final question. "Did you ever bring him here before Tuesday?" Kimberly hesitated. "Half a second? Maybe less." "It was enough." Roger nodded. Then he left. At 7:11, he was back in the Explorer. He did not drive directly to the hotel. He stopped at a Panera Bread near Sawmill Road and sat in the parking lot. He opened his notebook. How long? A few months? How many? I don't know. Had Jason been at this house before? No answer. Roger wrote only the statements, no conclusions. Then his phone chimed. An email. The sender was the bank's document services department. Subject requested HELOC records. Roger opened it. Additional archived documentation had been retrieved. He downloaded the attached PDF bundle. There were 37 pages. Most were routine. Disclosures, account notices, transaction confirmations. Roger scrolled slowly. Page 19 contained the April authorization he already knew. Page 23 showed another advance. Page 24 included contact information associated with follow-up verification. Roger stopped. The primary borrower field showed his own name. The address was Ashbourne Drive. Then alternate contact number. A phone number ending in 6728. Roger frowned. It wasn't his. It wasn't Kimberly's. At least not any number he knew. He copied it onto his notepad. He considered calling, then stopped. Calling an unknown number would reveal his own number and potentially alert whoever answered. There was no reason to do that. Instead, Roger searched his own contacts. He rarely deleted numbers, contractors, engineers, clients, vendors, people he had met once and might never speak to again. He entered the final 4 digits. One result appeared. Roger stared at the name. Jason Whitmore. For a moment, Roger could not remember why Jason's number was even in his phone. Then the fundraising dinner returned. At the end of the evening, Jason had mentioned that his company was considering renovating warehouse space near Dublin. He had asked Roger whether he could recommend a structural engineering firm. Roger had handed over a business card. Jason had texted his contact information. Roger had saved it. Nothing had ever come of the conversation. Until now. He opened the contact. Jason Whitmore. Mobile. The complete number matched the alternate contact number on the HELOC document. Every digit. Roger checked again. Then a third time. He felt no rush of triumph, only a cold pressure behind his ribs. Until that moment he had kept the 2 problems separate. Jason in the bedroom, money missing from the credit line. He had refused to connect them without evidence. Now a connection sat on page 24 of a bank document. Not proof of everything, but proof of something. Roger called Amanda. She answered from what sounded like her car. What did you find? Roger told her. She asked to send the page. He did. Are you certain that's Jason's number? It's saved in my contacts. How did you get it? Roger explained the fundraising dinner. Good, Amanda said. Good. It means there's an ordinary reason you possess the number. Preserve the original message if you still have it. Roger searched. The old text thread remained. Jason's message from 6 months earlier was still there. Jason Whitmore. Good meeting you tonight. Appreciate the engineer recommendation. Roger took a screenshot but did not alter the conversation. Amanda continued. Don't contact Jason. I won't. Don't ask Kimberly about this tonight. I won't. And Roger, yes. This still doesn't tell us who authorized what. I know. But it gives us a reason to start asking better questions. The call ended. Roger remained in the parking lot. Cars entered and left around him. A father carried 2 paper bags toward a minivan. A teenager pushed shopping carts across the pavement. The world remained painfully normal. Roger looked at the bank document again. Primary borrower, Roger M. Berry. Alternate contact, Jason Whitmore's phone number. He remembered Jason standing on the stairs, then Kimberly asking why the exact number of months mattered. Roger closed the laptop. For the first time, the affair and the money were no longer 2 separate cracks. Somewhere beneath the surface they touched. The next morning, Roger sat across from Amanda Collins with page 24 between them. Jason Whitmore's phone number had been circled in blue ink. Amanda had made the circle. Roger had made no marks on the original. You're certain? She asked. Yes. And the old text confirms when you received the number. Roger handed her a printed copy. Jason Whitmore, good meeting you tonight. Appreciate the engineer recommendation. Amanda compared the number. Same. Roger nodded. She placed both pages into a file. This gives us a connection. It does not tell us why his number appears on the lender record. I understand. Good. Amanda opened another folder. I've requested preservation of the relevant records through the proper channels. If this turns into litigation over disputed debt or authorization, I don't want documents disappearing because somebody waited too long. Roger looked at the growing stack. 3 days earlier, his marriage had been 11 years of dinners, mortgage payments, holidays, and ordinary routines. Now it had tabs, property, banking, credit, communications. Roger disliked that more than he expected. Amanda pushed a sheet toward him. There's something else. It was a public business filing. Roger read their name. K&W Residential Partners, LLC. The address beneath it was in Westerville. Roger looked up. What is this you tell me? I've never seen the company name. Kimberly's name appears on an associated filing. Roger read further. There it was. Kimberly Berry. He kept reading. Another name appeared. Jason Whitmore. Roger's eyes stopped. He returned to the top. K&W. Kimberly. Whitmore. The initials were almost insulting in their simplicity. How long has this existed? About 16 months. Roger said nothing. Amanda continued. We found it because one of the transfers you identified appears connected to an account associated with the entity. Roger looked at the amount. $7,600. One of the numbers from his notebook. What does the company own? We're still establishing that. Roger turned the page. An address appeared. A duplex on Maple Crest Avenue in Westerville. His hand stopped. He knew that address. Not because Kimberly had ever mentioned it, because Roger had seen it at work. Wait, Amanda looked up. I know this property. How Roger leaned back. His memory moved to 4 months earlier. A Monday morning. He had been reviewing inspection assignments at the office when the Westerville address appeared on his schedule. An older duplex undergoing substantial renovation, electrical work, structural alterations, a converted rear addition. Roger had opened the project file. Then he saw an ownership-related document with Kimberly's name attached. He had stared at it for several seconds, not because he suspected an affair, not because he suspected financial misconduct, because his wife had apparently invested in a property without mentioning it. Roger had called Kimberly during lunch. No answer. Then he had done what his professional rules required. He went to Mark Ellison. My wife's name is connected to this property, Roger had said. Mark had looked at the screen. You involved in them financially? Not that I know. Mark raised an eyebrow. Roger had heard how strange that sounded. I need to recuse myself. Mark reassigned the inspection that afternoon. Roger never visited the duplex. He never opened the subsequent inspection reports. He never called the contractor. He had gone home intending to ask Kimberly, but that evening she had been preparing for a presentation. The next morning, Roger left for Cincinnati. Days passed. When he eventually mentioned seeing her name on a Westerville project, Kimberly gave him a simple explanation. A friend asked me to put a little money into a rental. How much? Not enough to matter. Roger had asked whether they needed to discuss it. Kimberly said it came from money she had set aside. He believed her. That was the entire conversation. Now Roger sat in Amanda's office looking at the same address. I recused myself from the incident. Amanda's expression sharpened. You documented that my supervisor reassigned it. Email, probably. Find it. Roger took out his phone. He searched his company email. Westerville assignment reassignment, 4 months earlier. From Roger Berry to Mark Ellison. Owner documentation includes my spouse. Potential conflict. Please reassign. Mark's response. Agreed. Reassigned to Palmer. Do not access project further unless requested for administrative reasons. Roger showed Amanda. She read it twice. Forward this to yourself according to whatever company policy allows, and we'll discuss obtaining it properly if needed. Don't start removing company records, I won't." Amanda pointed at him with her pen. This may become important. Roger understood why. If the Westerville property became part of the divorce dispute, someone might question whether Roger had used his professional position against it. The email showed the opposite. He had stepped away before he knew anything was wrong. Roger looked again at the LLC filing. What happened to the property? Amanda slid another set of documents forward. "We have preliminary information. The duplex had been purchased for $286,000. The plan appeared straightforward. Renovate, refinance, rent both units. But the renovation budget had grown. Contractor invoices, material costs, permit delays, change orders, carrying costs." Roger scanned the numbers. The original renovation estimate appeared to have been roughly $74,000. Later records suggested substantially more had been spent or committed. One invoice caught his attention: structural reinforcement, another electrical remediation, another plumbing replacement. Roger knew what those phrases meant in an old duplex. Money, lots of it. He studied the dates. Some matched withdrawals from the HELOC. "Are you saying our house financed this?" "I'm saying money appears to have moved from accounts connected to you and Kimberly toward accounts associated with this project." Amanda tapped the page. "We prove the route before we characterize it." Roger nodded. Again, facts first. But this time the facts were becoming difficult to separate from what he felt. Kimberly had told him the investment was small. She had told him the money was hers. She had not mentioned Jason. Roger remembered the night she said it. She had been standing at the kitchen island, cutting a lemon. He could picture the knife, the cutting board, the casual tone. "A friend asked me to put a little money into a rental." At the time, Roger had been more concerned about whether she understood the risk. He had almost offered to review the numbers. Kimberly had laughed. Roger, not everything needs an inspection. He had let it go. Amanda turned another page. This contractor received several payments. Roger looked. 3 payments totaled more than $18,000. The company address matched the Westerville project. One payment date was 2 days after a HELOC advance. Another followed a transfer from their joint checking account. Roger took out his notebook. He began matching dates. Amanda watched him. "You do this for work, don't you?" "Not money." Patterns. Roger looked up. Yes. He placed the transactions chronologically. HELOC advance, transfer, LLC deposit, contractor payment. Not every dollar connected cleanly, but enough did to make the shape visible. Roger felt the same sensation he experienced when a building problem stopped looking random. One defect could be coincidence. 3 defects following the same structural line were a system. "How bad is the project?" he asked. "We don't know yet. Is it producing rent?" Possibly not at the level expected. Amanda pointed to several documents. There were permit delays. Contractor disputes appear likely, and there may have been additional capital contributions. From Kimberly, "That's one question." From Jason, another. Roger looked at the LLC name again. K&W Residential Partners. For 16 months, Kimberly had been part owner of a company with the man Roger found walking out of their bedroom. 16 months. Kimberly had told him the affair was a few months. Roger did not automatically treat the business relationship as proof the affair had lasted 16 months. He had learned that lesson already. A connection was not a conclusion. But it created questions. A lot of them. That afternoon, Roger returned to work. He found Mark near the plan room. "Remember that Westerville duplex I recused myself from?" Mark thought for a second. "Maple Crest." "Yes. What about it?" "Do you remember why I stepped away? Your wife was connected to ownership." Roger nodded. "I may need documentation of the recusal, eventually." Mark studied him. "Legal issue, potentially." Mark did not ask for details. "I'll preserve the assignment history. Thank you." Roger returned to his desk. He did not open the Westerville project. He could have. His system credentials probably still allowed him to search the address. But Mark's old instruction had been clear: do not access project further. Roger obeyed it. That choice felt small. It would not remain small. At 5:26 p.m., Amanda emailed. She had received another batch of financial records. Roger opened the attachment from his hotel room. One document showed the LLC account setup. K&W Residential Partners LLC. Authorized parties. Kimberly Berry. Jason Whitmore. Roger read the names. Below them was the date the account had been opened, 14 months earlier. The same period when unexplained withdrawals had begun appearing. Roger leaned back. His phone remained silent. Kimberly had not contacted him all afternoon. For once he was grateful. He looked at the letters again. K&W. For days, Roger had been trying not to connect facts before evidence connected them for him. Now the evidence was doing exactly that. Kimberly had not merely shared a bedroom with Jason. She had shared a company with him, a property, an investment, and apparently money that Roger had spent years protecting. He closed the document. The initials remained in his mind. K for Kimberly, W for Whitmore. And Roger finally understood that the affair he had discovered at 9:17 on Tuesday night might have been only the smallest secret in the house. The divorce papers were delivered to Kimberly on a Monday morning. Roger knew because Amanda called him at 10:16. Service is complete. Roger was standing inside a half-finished medical office building in Hilliard, wearing a hard hat and looking at a fire-rated wall assembly. He glanced through an open doorway at workers carrying drywall. "All right, that's all you have to say." "What else should I say?" Amanda gave a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Nothing. Keep doing what you're doing." Roger put his phone away. Then he returned to the wall. At 10:41, Kimberly called. Roger let it ring. At 10:44, she called again. At 10:51, a text appeared. "You filed for divorce without even sitting down with me." Roger read it once. He did not answer. Another followed. 11 years, and this is how you handle it. Roger slipped the phone into his pocket. The irony did not make him smile. By lunchtime, there were 7 messages. By 3, Kimberly had stopped apologizing. "You abandoned the house. You refused to communicate. You've always cared more about work and money than this marriage. Then maybe you should ask yourself why I needed someone to actually notice me." Roger stared at that sentence longer than the others. It hurt. That surprised him. The affair itself had produced something almost physical. A pressure in his chest, a coldness in his hands. This was different. This reached backward. It tried to rewrite 11 years. Roger thought about late-night airport pickups. The week Kimberly had pneumonia, and he slept on the couch so she could have the bed to herself. The Christmas he drove through freezing rain to Cincinnati because her mother had fallen. The mornings he packed her lunch when she had early presentations. None of those memories proved he had been a perfect husband. He knew he hadn't been. He worked too much sometimes. He could become quiet when stressed. He preferred fixing problems to discussing feelings for hours. Those things could be true. Jason could still have been in their bedroom. Both facts could exist. Roger did not need to erase his own flaws to recognize Kimberly's choices. He put the phone down. At 4:20, Amanda called again. Kimberly retained counsel. Who? Eric Lawson. Roger had heard the name. Lawson practiced family law in Columbus and had a reputation for aggressive temporary motions. What does that change nothing about what you do today? Roger waited. Amanda continued. But expect the story to change. It did. 3 days later, Roger sat in Amanda's office reading the first formal response. Kimberly described the marriage as having suffered from long-term emotional neglect. She asserted Roger exercised disproportionate control over household finances. She said Roger had left the marital residence voluntarily. She requested temporary exclusive use of the Worthington house while proceedings continued. Roger lowered the document. Financial control. Amanda watched him. Don't react to the wording. She had access to everything. Then we'll document access. She made more discretionary purchases than I did. Then records will show that too. Roger looked again at the filing. She says I abandoned the house. You left after finding another man there. You have not surrendered ownership simply because you're staying elsewhere. Let me handle the legal characterization. Roger placed the document down. What about the affair? Amanda leaned back. This is where people make mistakes. Roger waited. Infidelity may matter in certain contexts. It may matter to negotiations. It may matter if marital funds were spent for purposes related to the affair. But don't build your entire case around the idea that a judge will punish Kimberly because she cheated. I wasn't planning to. Good. Because our stronger questions are financial. Roger understood. Jason in the bedroom had ended the marriage emotionally. The documents might decide how it ended financially. That afternoon, Roger returned to work. Mark Ellison met him near the coffee machine. "You okay?" Roger poured black coffee. "I'm fine." Mark looked at him. "You've said 6 words all morning. That's above average." Mark smiled. Roger didn't. Mark's expression changed. "You need time off, no? You sure, yes?" Roger carried his coffee back to his desk. On the monitor was a structural plan for a retail renovation in Grove City. He worked until 6:10. For several hours, nobody asked about Kimberly. Nobody asked about Jason. Nobody knew about K&W Residential Partners. Roger liked that. The next week brought the first significant discovery documents. Amanda sent them through a secure portal. Roger opened them at the hotel. Kimberly had provided explanations for several disputed transactions. Some were ordinary: insurance, medical expenses, household purchases. Roger checked them against records and marked them accordingly. He did not classify every expense as suspicious simply because Kimberly had made it. That mattered to him. If a $640 payment had actually gone toward property taxes, he marked it property taxes. If a $920 charge matched legitimate home repairs, he removed it from his question list. He wanted the spreadsheet smaller if smaller was accurate. By midnight, 23 entries remained. One stood out: 11,400. Kimberly's disclosure described it as home renovation expense. Roger read it twice. Then he looked around the hotel room. Home renovation. He mentally walked through the Worthington house during that month. No kitchen project, no bathroom remodel, no new flooring, no major plumbing, no windows. The roof repair had happened months later, and insurance documentation covered it. Roger searched his records. Nothing. He opened their joint checking statement. The 11,400 had moved out 6 months earlier. He checked the HELOC. A $7,600 advance had occurred shortly before it. Another transfer had filled the difference. Roger wrote the dates down. The next morning he called Amanda. What renovation did Kimberly identify for the 11,400? She didn't specify. We didn't have one. You're sure, yes? Can you prove that? Roger paused. Proving something did not happen was harder. There should be no permits, no contractor invoices for our address, no insurance claim. Nothing. Amanda said, "Let's start with the invoice," she produced. Roger opened the document. A company called Buckeye Restoration and Contracting. Amount $11,400. Scope description: interior, framing, electrical corrections, structural repair. Roger frowned. Those were not cosmetic improvements. He scrolled lower. The customer name was partially obscured by the scan. Then he saw the service address. Not Ashbourne Drive. Maplecrest Avenue. Westerville. Roger leaned closer. The duplex. He read the invoice from top to bottom. Buckeye Restoration had performed work at the property owned through K&W Residential Partners. Yet the 11,400 payment had been characterized in Kimberly's disclosure as a home renovation expense. Amanda was silent for several seconds after Roger explained. "Send me your annotated copy." Roger did. "Don't write anything else on the original. I haven't." "Good. What does this mean?" "It means we ask why an expense for the Westerville property was described this way." Roger looked at the invoice. The contractor name, the address, the date. Everything was concrete, no assumptions. Amanda continued, "And before you ask, no, this doesn't prove every disputed transaction went to the LLC. I wasn't going to ask. I know." Roger sat back. The spreadsheet had begun as a way to understand missing money. Now it was becoming a map, The following Friday, Kimberly requested to speak with Roger directly. Amanda advised him that logistics and ordinary matters could be handled carefully, but substantive legal issues should go through counsel. Kimberly called anyway. Roger answered because they still had insurance and household matters to coordinate. Her voice was controlled. "Eric says you're accusing me of stealing. I haven't said that. You're questioning every dollar I've spent." "No. You sent pages of transactions. Transactions I don't recognize." Kimberly exhaled sharply. "You always did this." Roger looked at the $11,400 invoice on his desk. "Did what made money more important than people." Roger let the silence sit. Then he asked one question. "What renovation did we do 6 months ago for $11,400? Silence. Roger waited. Kimberly said, "I don't remember every expense. The invoice says Maple Crest Avenue." Another silence. "Longer." "Talk to Eric," she said. The line went dead. Roger lowered the phone. For the first time, Kimberly had stopped explaining. The documents had done what arguments could not. They had narrowed the room. 2 days later, Amanda emailed Roger a short message. "We need to bring in a forensic accountant." Roger called immediately. "You think it's that serious? I think the transactions are complicated enough that I don't want either of us pretending we're accountants." "Who?" "Natalie Brooks. She's worked on business and marital tracing matters for years." Roger looked at his spreadsheet. 31,000 had become more. The LLC had become a duplex. The duplex had become contractor payments. And now, one payment Kimberly had labeled as work on their home led directly to Westerville. Roger closed the spreadsheet. He thought again about the first night. 2 wineglasses, 1 unfamiliar jacket, 1 man coming down the stairs. Those had been obvious. The dangerous things were quieter. They came with transaction numbers, invoices, dates, descriptions that almost sounded reasonable. Almost. Roger opened the $11,400 invoice one more time. At the bottom, beneath the contractor's signature, was a reference number he had not noticed before. Amanda had asked Natalie to start with that number. By Monday morning, they would know where the money went next. Natalie Brooks arrived at Amanda Collins's office at 8:55 Monday morning, carrying a laptop and 1 black binder. She was 44, precise, and unimpressed by drama. Roger liked that immediately. Amanda introduced them, then pushed a copy of Roger's transaction spreadsheet across the conference table. Natalie looked at it for less than a minute. "You made this, yes? What do you do, commercial building inspections?" "That explains the columns." Roger said nothing. Natalie opened her laptop. "I don't care who cheated on whom." The sentence was so direct that Roger looked at her. Natalie continued, "I care where money originated, where it moved, who controlled the destination, and what documents support each step. If you want emotional conclusions, I'm the wrong person." Amanda glanced at Roger. Roger nodded. "That's what I want." "Good." Natalie turned the laptop toward him. A spreadsheet filled the screen. It was far more detailed than Roger's. She had begun with the $11,400 contractor payment. The reference number on the invoice matched a transaction received by Buckeye Restoration and Contracting. The service address was Maple Crest Avenue, Westerville, not Ashbourne Drive, Worthington. Natalie pointed to the first line. "Now we go backward. The $11,400 had come from an account held by K&W Residential Partners. 3 days earlier, $9,000 had entered that account. Part of that money traced back to the Berry joint checking account. Before that money had entered the joint account from the HELOC. Not every dollar traveled in a perfect straight line." Natalie made that clear. "Money mixes," she said. "That's why we don't point at $1 bill and pretend it has a name written on it. We reconstruct timing balances and transfers." Roger watched the dates. HELOC advance, joint account, LLC, contractor, 4 steps. Amanda asked, "How much can you trace with confidence?" "Not enough yet." Natalie clicked another tab. "Because this isn't the only route. She had identified transfers into K&W Residential Partners from another account. Some appeared connected to Jason, some remained unclear. Then she showed Roger something he had not noticed: savings withdrawals. Their savings account had rarely moved, except for taxes, vacations, and major household expenses. But over 10 months, Kimberly had made several withdrawals. $3,000, $2,500, $4,200, Waller $750. Roger remembered some of them. At the time, Kimberly had given explanations that sounded ordinary: a conference expense that would be reimbursed, a deposit for a family trip, a car repair. Roger had never checked whether the money came back. Natalie had. Some of it didn't. She tapped the screen. These amounts appear to overlap with periods when the Westerville project required additional capital. Roger stared at the numbers. How much too early for a final total? Estimate. Natalie looked at Amanda. Amanda nodded. Natalie answered, "More than the 31,000 you originally identified." Roger leaned back. The number itself no longer shocked him. The pattern did. Kimberly had not taken one enormous amount. There had been no $50,000 transfer that would have forced Roger to notice. Instead, money moved in pieces. $2, $200, $39.50, $7,600, $4,850. Amounts large enough to matter. Small enough to disappear inside a life Roger believed was stable. Natalie clicked another tab. Now the revolving credit account ending 4419. Roger recognized it immediately. "What about it? Payments were made from your joint account." "I know. Some purchases appear related to construction materials." Roger frowned. "For Maplecrest, possibly. I won't say definitely until I have merchant detail." Natalie closed the file. "This is going to take time." Roger looked at the binder. "How much time? Weeks, probably." That answer frustrated him. But Roger knew buildings. A rushed inspection could miss the defect that mattered most. So he nodded. "Do it right." Over the next 12 days, records arrived in batches. Roger continued working. He stopped living at the Hyatt and rented a furnished one-bedroom apartment in Dublin on a short-term lease. It had beige walls, cheap blinds, and exactly 4 plates in the kitchen cabinet. The first night, Roger ate rotisserie chicken standing over the counter because there was no dining table. It was not home, but it was quiet. Every few evenings, Amanda sent him documents to review for factual context. Roger answered only what he knew. "Did you authorize this payment number? Do you recognize this vendor?" "Yes." "Was this household expense legitimate?" "Yes." "Do you know why Kimberly transferred this amount?" "No." Roger became comfortable saying those last 2 words. "I don't know." He had spent his career knowing that uncertainty honestly stated was more useful than certainty invented. One Thursday evening, Natalie called. "I found the savings route." Roger put down the tape measure he had been using to hang a shelf in the apartment. "How much?" "Enough that we need to revise the timeline." He sat at the small kitchen counter. Natalie explained. Several withdrawals from the Barry savings account had moved through an account controlled by Kimberly before reaching K&W Residential Partners. The timing corresponded with contractor invoices and carrying costs. "Could those still be legitimate investments?" Roger asked. "That isn't my determination." "Right. My determination is where the money went." Roger rubbed his thumb along the edge of the counter. "How much from savings?" Natalie gave him the preliminary figure. Roger closed his eyes for 2 seconds. Not because the number would ruin him. It wouldn't. Because he remembered Kimberly sitting across from him at dinner, discussing whether they should postpone replacing the deck. She had said they should be careful with savings. That was during the same period. Roger opened his eyes. "Send it to Amanda." "Already did." The next Discovery production arrived the following Monday. This one included business emails from K&W Residential Partners. Roger did not read them casually. Amanda's office identified which materials were relevant. Most were boring: contractor scheduling, permit delays, invoices, material shortages. One email chain showed Jason pushing for cheaper flooring. Another showed Kimberly discussing a refinancing timeline. Roger read without imagining conversations that were not there. Then Amanda called. "There is one email I want you to see." She sent the page. Roger opened it. The exchange was dated 7 months before he found Jason in the house. Kimberly had written about needing additional money for contractor overruns. Jason responded. The first paragraph concerned financing. The second concerned timing. Then one sentence. Roger read it. "Daniel never checks anything." He stared at the screen. Wrong name. For a second, he wondered whether he had opened the wrong file. Then Amanda called back. "Roger, I'm here." "You saw it." "He called me Daniel." Amanda was silent. Then Roger understood. The email extraction had attached a separate fragment from another thread, or the name had been inserted incorrectly in the produced record. He zoomed in. Amanda checked the original. "Hold on. Keyboard sounds." Then, "That's an extraction error from the review copy. The underlying email says Roger." Roger waited. Amanda resent the verified page. This time the line was clear. Roger never checks anything. He read it once, then again. The sentence hurt more than an insult should have. Not because Jason thought Roger was stupid, because the sentence revealed an assumption. Roger was predictable. Roger trusted Kimberly. Roger paid bills without interrogating every purchase. Roger went to work. Roger came home. Roger believed his wife when she said a small investment didn't matter. And somewhere that trust had apparently become a joke. Roger printed the email. The printer in his apartment made a mechanical grinding sound. The page slid out. He placed it on the counter. For several seconds he imagined Jason at the fundraising dinner. Firm handshake, friendly smile. Appreciate the engineer recommendation. Roger could have called him. The number was still in his phone. He could have asked what kind of man stood in another man's house, drank his wine, used his bedroom, and joked about his ignorance. Roger did none of those things. He picked up a blue pen. On the transaction timeline he found the date of the email. Then he marked it. One small line. Amanda called again. "You okay, yes? You don't sound angry?" "I am. Good." Roger almost laughed. Amanda continued. "Being angry isn't the problem. What you do with it is." Roger looked at Jason's sentence. Roger never checks anything. He folded the page once. Not crumpled. Not torn. Folded. Then he placed it in the appropriate folder. 2 days later, Natalie requested a meeting. This time she had a preliminary flow chart. The numbers were larger. The routes were clearer. HELOC, savings, joint checking, K&W residential partners, contractors, credit card, carrying costs. Roger followed each arrow. "This isn't complete," Natalie said. "I know. There are still transactions I can't classify. I know. And some expenditures may ultimately be treated differently than you expect." Roger nodded. Natalie looked at him. "You keep saying you know, because I do." "You keep saying you know, because I do." She turned one final page. "There is another document we haven't analyzed yet." Roger looked down. It was not a bank statement, not an invoice, not an email. At the top was a notary seal. Below it was his full legal name, Roger Michael Berry, and beneath that was a signature. His signature. Except Roger could not remember signing it. He looked at the signature from across the conference table. It resembled his. The capital R had the same long first stroke. The B in Berry leaned slightly forward. Even the final Y dropped below the line in roughly the right place. Amanda Collins noticed his expression. "Recognize the document." "No." "Recognize the signature." "It looks like mine." Natalie Brooks closed her laptop. "That isn't the same question." Roger nodded. He read the heading. The document appeared connected to authorization for financial activity involving the credit line. The notary block was near the bottom. Roger read the date. Then he looked at Amanda. "I don't remember signing this." Amanda pulled the page closer. Don't decide what that means yet, I know. Do you... Roger met her eyes. Yes. She slid a legal pad toward him. Then write down everything you can independently establish about that date. Roger took the pen. Month, day, year. He recognized the week. Not because of Kimberly, because of work. He had been involved in a major inspection sequence for a distribution center outside Cincinnati. Roger wrote the project name, hotel, mileage, people who might have seen him. Then he stopped. Amanda looked at the page. Good. Roger pointed toward the notarized document. What happens with that? We verify it. Same answer. Different stakes. Amanda would seek appropriate records concerning the notary execution process and lender documentation. Roger would do nothing. No call to Kimberly, no call to the notary, no accusation. He left the office at 11:20. On the drive toward Hilliard, his mind kept returning to the signature. Then, unexpectedly, it shifted to his father. Walter Berry had never been wealthy in the way Kimberly understood wealth. He wore the same winter coat for 15 years. He drove pickup trucks until rust appeared around the wheel wells, but Walter had owned land. He had saved. He had invested. He had kept records. When Roger was 25, Walter told him something Roger had found boring. You don't need to look rich. You need to know what you own. Roger had followed that advice almost accidentally. His retirement contributions increased whenever his salary did. He bought broad market funds automatically every month. He kept consumer debt low. When other people at work traded vehicles. Every 3 years, Roger kept the Explorer. Kimberly hated that SUV. 2 years earlier, they had been leaving a restaurant in Easton when a valet pulled it around between a new Range Rover and a Mercedes. Kimberly looked at the Ford. You make enough money to stop driving that thing. It runs. That's your standard for a car. Yes. Roger had smiled. Pretty much. She hadn't. At the time, it seemed trivial. Now Roger understood Kimberly had built a picture of him from things she could see. Old Ford, discount shirts, home coffee, no expensive watch. She had mistaken low display for low value. Roger had never corrected her. Why would he? She was his wife. She had access to tax returns. She could have asked. At work that afternoon, Roger reviewed mechanical room clearances and fire-stopping deficiencies. At 4:30, Mark Ellison appeared beside his desk. You have 5 minutes. Roger followed him into the conference room. Mark closed the door. This isn't about your personal situation. Roger waited. We've been restructuring ownership. Roger knew that. The consultancy had 3 senior partners, 2 approaching retirement. Mark continued. Your minority interest is going to be part of the discussion this quarter. You've been here 17 years. We need to talk about expanding it. Roger leaned back. Now, bad timing. Roger almost laughed. You could say that? Mark nodded. We can delay. No, business is business. Mark handed him a preliminary valuation packet. Roger looked at the number attached to his existing interest. It was larger than Kimberly probably believed, not because Roger had hidden it. The annual statements had been mailed to the house. Kimberly simply never cared about them. To her, Roger worked inspections. He wore boots. He drove to construction sites. He came home with dust on his pants. The idea that he held equity in the firm had never seemed important to her. Roger placed the packet into his briefcase. That evening, he reviewed his finances for Amanda's disclosure requirements. Everything would be disclosed. Retirement, brokerage, business interest, bank accounts, no games, no hidden transfers. Roger entered each number. His 401k had grown steadily for 17 years. His brokerage account was substantial but unremarkable. The business interest had value. The Worthington property had equity. On paper, Roger Berry was worth considerably more than his clothes or vehicle suggested. He felt no satisfaction in that. Money could not make Tuesday night disappear, but accurate records could prevent someone else from defining what belonged to whom. 3 days later, Amanda called. Kimberly's side sent a settlement proposal. Roger drove to her office after work. Eric Lawson's proposal ran 11 pages. Roger read slowly. Kimberly wanted temporary possession of the Worthington house to continue. She proposed division of retirement assets, treatment of various accounts, allocation of debts. Then Roger reached the section concerning disputed HELOC transactions. He read it twice. The proposal effectively resolved several issues if Roger agreed not to pursue extensive reimbursement or accounting claims related to certain disputed funds. Roger looked up. Why would I agree to this now? Amanda shrugged. You tell me. We don't have Natalie's final tracing. No. We don't have the lender review. No. We haven't resolved the authorization. No. Then the numbers aren't finished. Amanda smiled slightly. That's my view. Roger closed the proposal. Reject it. Counter not yet? Amanda studied him. You're comfortable waiting no. That made her smile again, but Roger tapped the document. I'd rather be uncomfortable for 3 months than wrong for 10 years. Amanda nodded. I'll respond. Roger stood. Before he reached the door, Amanda spoke. One more thing. He turned. The absence of a prenup means we don't get to use shortcuts. I never signed one. I know. Which means we trace, we classify, we value. Your premarital house contribution doesn't magically decide everything. Neither does Kimberly's affair. Neither does your business interest. Roger nodded. The paperwork decides. The law applied to the paperwork decides. Roger accepted the correction. That distinction mattered. The following week, Natalie sent an updated financial schedule. The number associated with disputed or potentially relevant transfers had increased again. Some funds clearly related to K&W. Some needed further analysis. Some would probably remain ordinary marital expenditures. Roger read every footnote. At the end of the report, Natalie had added a section titled Documents Requiring Verification. The notarized authorization was listed first. Roger called her. Anything new? Not on the notary yet. What about the signature I don't authenticate handwriting? I know, but I found something else. Roger sat straighter. What? There is a second notarized document. Silence. Roger looked toward the window of his apartment. Rain tapped lightly against the glass. Second different date. Related transaction. Does it have my name? Yes. Signature? Yes. Roger closed his eyes. Do I remember signing it? Natalie's voice remained neutral. I can't answer that. Roger almost smiled despite himself. No, you can't. She sent the document. Roger opened it. The signature looked like his again. He checked the date. This time he knew immediately where he had been. Chicago. 3-day professional conference. Roger pulled up his old calendar. Hotel reservation, conference registration, flight receipt. He placed them beside the notarized page. The document indicated an in-person notarization in Franklin County, Ohio. Roger stared at those words. Then, at his United Airlines boarding pass from Columbus to Chicago that same morning, he called Amanda. She answered on the first ring. Another one she asked. Natalie sent it. I've seen it. I was in Chicago. I know. Roger looked at the signature again. For weeks, the case had been about numbers. Now the numbers had signatures, and the signatures had locations. Amanda's voice became measured. Roger, this changes what we need to verify. How we're going to obtain the notary records and the underlying lender file. Roger looked at his own name written beneath a seal he had no memory of seeing. Amanda continued. And until we know exactly what happened, you do not accuse anyone of forging anything. Roger's answer was immediate. I won't. But when this call ended, he did something he had not done before. He placed his driver's license beside the document. Then he signed his name on a blank sheet of paper. Roger Michael Berry. He compared the two signatures. They were close. Very close. Close enough that someone had either watched him sign his name many times, or the signature had not been created in the way the document claimed. Roger stopped comparing the signatures after 10 minutes. There was nothing more he could learn by staring at them. One appeared on a document dated while he was in Indianapolis. The other appeared on a document claiming an in-person notarization in Franklin County, while Roger was in Chicago. Those were facts. Everything beyond them required verification. The next morning, Amanda had already begun that process. She requested the underlying lender file, electronic execution records, transaction history, available verification logs and records associated with the notarizations. Roger supplied his own documentation: Chicago hotel receipt, airline confirmation, conference registration, credit card charge from a restaurant on West Adams Street. For Indianapolis, he had even more: company mileage report, hotel folio, inspection schedule, email exchanges sent from the job site. Roger forwarded everything to Amanda. Then he went to work. For 12 days, nothing happened. That was the part nobody talked about. Evidence did not produce instant justice. Documents moved through departments. Requests were processed. Attorneys waited. Banks reviewed. People returned calls 2 days late. Roger still had inspections. He still bought groceries. He still washed his clothes in the apartment laundry room. He still woke some mornings forgetting for 3 seconds that he no longer lived on Ashbourne Drive. Then memory returned. Kimberly, Jason, the stairs, the money. On the 13th day, Amanda called. The lender has escalated the file. Roger was standing beside his Explorer outside a warehouse in Grove City. To what internal fraud review? Roger said nothing. Amanda continued. That is not a finding, I understand. It means they believe the irregularities justify additional investigation. What did they find? We don't have the full report, but the execution records raised questions. Roger looked across the parking lot. A forklift moved pallets behind an open loading door. What kind of questions? Timing? Verification? Contact information? Possibly more. Jason's number. It is part of the file. Roger gripped the phone slightly tighter. Amanda heard the silence. Roger? Yes. Do nothing. I know. No confrontation, no call to Jason, no message to Kimberly. I said I know. I'm repeating it because this is where people get stupid. Roger looked at the Ford. I've had plenty of opportunities, and you've avoided them. Keep doing that. The call ended. 3 days later, Roger received a message from Kimberly. We need to talk without lawyers. He did not answer. An hour later, please, 10 minutes. Roger forwarded it to Amanda. She advised against discussing disputed financial matters privately. Roger replied to Kimberly with one sentence. Please communicate substantive matters through counsel. Nothing else. The next afternoon, Roger left Collins, Harper, and Lane after reviewing another set of disclosures. The parking garage sat 2 blocks away. He was halfway there when he heard his name. Roger. He stopped. Kimberly stood beside a silver parking meter. She had been waiting. Roger felt irritation before anything else. Not fear, not affection. Irritation. You shouldn't be here. Kimberly walked toward him. I asked for 10 minutes. I answered. No. Amanda answered. I answered. Kimberly stopped 6 feet away. Downtown traffic moved behind them. You've turned our marriage into a legal file. Roger looked at her. No. Yes, you have. Everything goes through Amanda. Every dollar is questioned. Every conversation becomes evidence. Roger said nothing. Kimberly's voice dropped. I made a mistake. Roger almost corrected her. Instead, he waited. She continued. Jason was a mistake. What about K&W? Her expression changed. Small. But Roger saw it. That's business. Then Eric can discuss it with Amanda. See this. This is what I'm talking about. Roger started walking. Kimberly stepped beside him. You're trying to destroy me. Roger stopped. The sentence hung between them. For weeks he had heard versions of it. He was punishing her. He was controlling. He was cold. He was trying to ruin her. Roger looked directly at Kimberly. His voice remained level. I'm documenting what happened. She stared at him. Roger continued toward the garage. Kimberly did not follow. He did not look back. That evening, the sentence stayed with him, not because it sounded clever. It didn't. It was simply accurate. Roger had not called Kimberly's employer. He had not contacted Jason's company. He had not posted photographs. He had not told neighbors. He had not emptied accounts. He had not even told Megan the full story. He had preserved documents. That was all. If the documents were damaging, Roger had not made them damaging. The following week, Amanda received correspondence from Jason Whitmore's attorney. Jason denied involvement in any unauthorized execution of documents. He acknowledged business involvement with K&W residential partners, but disputed responsibility for certain financing decisions. Roger read the letter once. "Interesting timing," he said. Amanda looked up. "Don't interpret it. I'm not. You are." Roger almost smiled. "Fine. I'm noticing the timing. Better." The letter changed nothing. Natalie continued tracing funds. The lender continued reviewing. Then problems at Maplecrest Avenue became more visible. A contractor filed a claim over unpaid work. A supplier demanded payment. K&W residential partners had apparently relied on renovation timelines that never materialized. The duplex still existed, but the simple investment Kimberly had described over dinner now looked like an expensive project struggling under debt and unfinished obligations. Roger felt no satisfaction. That surprised him. He had imagined there might come a point when watching Jason lose money would feel good. It didn't. Jason losing money did not give Roger back Tuesday night. Kimberly facing contractor bills did not restore trust. Roger wanted one thing: separation. His name from obligations he had not approved, his assets from transactions he had not authorized, his future from decisions made without him. Amanda understood that. "We're not trying to punish bad investing," she told him. "I know. We're trying to determine responsibility." "I know. And the lender decides its own review." Roger nodded. That Friday, the lender requested an interview with him through the appropriate process. Amanda prepared Roger beforehand. Answer exactly what they ask. "Okay, if you don't know, say you don't know. Okay, don't speculate about Kimberly. I won't. Don't speculate about Jason. I won't." The interview lasted 52 minutes. Roger confirmed his identity. He confirmed his travel dates. He described his understanding of the HELOC. He explained how he obtained Jason's number originally. He identified which signatures he remembered making and which documents he did not remember seeing. At one point, the interviewer asked, "Did you authorize Jason Whitmore to act as an alternate contact regarding advances on this account?" Roger answered no. "Did you authorize your wife to identify him as such?" "No." "Did you appear before the notary identified on these documents on the dates listed?" "Not to my knowledge. On one date I was in Chicago. On another I was traveling for work." "Can you support that, yes?" Roger had already provided the records. The interview ended without drama. No accusation. No revelation. Just thank you, Mr. Barry. We may contact you again." Roger closed the laptop. Amanda sat across the table. "How do you feel, tired?" "That's reasonable." Roger packed his documents. "Is that it for today?" The words mattered. For today. Everything now came in pieces. A week later, Roger was inspecting a 6-story office renovation when Amanda called. He stepped outside. Her tone was different. The lender issued an interim notice. Roger moved away from the construction entrance. "What does it say they've identified sufficient irregularities to continue formal internal review and to treat portions of the disputed activity separately while they investigate?" Roger exhaled slowly. "Does that remove the debt from me?" "Not yet." "So nothing's decided?" "Correct." Roger looked toward downtown Columbus. "Then why do you sound like something changed? Because they're no longer treating your complaint as a simple marital disagreement." Roger said nothing. Amanda continued, "And there's more. What they found an inconsistency in the contact verification associated with one of the advances. Jason. I don't have permission to characterize the full record yet." Roger waited. Amanda knew he would. Finally, she said, "The phone number is only part of it." Roger's attention sharpened. What else? A verification entry appears to have used information that should have been known only to someone with access to your personal financial records. Roger looked down at the concrete sidewalk. For 11 years, those records had been kept in one place. His house. The same house where Jason had walked down the stairs. Amanda spoke carefully. Do not jump ahead. Roger's answer was quiet. I won't. Good. Because the lender is still reviewing. When will we know? I don't know. Roger hated that answer, but he trusted it. 3 days later, Amanda forwarded him a letter. It was 4 pages, dense, procedural. Roger read every line. Near the end was the sentence that mattered. The lender had formally expanded its review of the disputed HELOC transactions based on inconsistencies in execution verification and authorization records. Roger printed the letter. He placed it beside the 2 notarized documents. For months, Kimberly had accused him of turning their marriage into paperwork. Now paperwork was the only thing in the room that had never changed its story. And on the final page, 1 line indicated that the lender's next determination could directly affect who would ultimately be responsible for the disputed debt. Roger learned that patience felt different when it was voluntary. Waiting for concrete to cure was easy. Waiting for a lender, 2 attorneys, a forensic accountant, and a divorce process to determine which pieces of his financial life still belonged to him was not. 6 weeks passed after the lender expanded its review. No final determination came. The divorce continued anyway. Roger's apartment lease rolled into another month. Attorney invoices arrived. Amanda's latest statement was $6 to $740. Natalie's work added another $3, $280. Roger paid both. Then he updated his spreadsheet. He had always believed financial discipline created freedom. Now he understood another benefit. It created endurance. Roger could afford to wait. He didn't enjoy spending thousands of dollars proving where his own money had gone, but he did not need to accept a bad agreement simply because the next legal bill frightened him. That distinction mattered. On a Wednesday morning, Roger sat in a conference room for his deposition. Eric Lawson sat across from him. Kimberly was not present. A court reporter positioned her equipment at the end of the table. Amanda sat beside Roger. The questions began simply. Name, address, occupation, income. Then they moved backward through 11 years. Who paid the mortgage? Both through marital income. Who managed investments? Roger primarily handled his own. Did Kimberly have access to financial information? Yes. Did Roger restrict her spending? No. Had he ever refused her access to joint funds? No. Then Eric shifted. Mr. Berry, would you describe yourself as emotionally available during your marriage? Amanda glanced at Roger. Roger answered carefully. I don't know how to measure that. Would your wife have described you as emotionally available? You would have to ask her. Eric leaned back. Did you work long hours sometimes? Travel, yes. How often? It varied. Would it surprise you if Kimberly felt neglected? Roger paused. No. Amanda looked at him. Eric did too. Roger continued. It would not surprise me that she felt something I didn't fully understand. Then you accept responsibility for the breakdown of the marriage, Amanda spoke. Objection to form. Roger waited. Amanda nodded for him to answer if he understood. Roger looked at Eric. I accept responsibility for my actions. And Kimberly. She is responsible for hers. Eric moved on. Roger felt no victory, only fatigue. The deposition lasted 4 hours and 19 minutes. When it ended, Roger walked outside and sat in his Explorer without starting the engine. His hands rested on the steering wheel. For the first time in weeks, he wanted to quit. Not the divorce, the process. He imagined calling Amanda, take the offer, split everything. Forget the HELOC, forget the savings, forget K&W. Forget Jason. Pay whatever it cost and make the whole thing stop. Roger closed his eyes. He could almost feel the relief. Then he remembered the $11,400 invoice. Home renovation expense. Maplecrest Avenue. He remembered Jason's email. Roger never checks anything. He remembered the notarized document dated while he was in Chicago. Roger opened his eyes. A bad settlement would not create peace. It would simply make exhaustion permanent. He started the Ford. The following week, Amanda suggested mediation. "It's time," she said. Roger sat across from her desk. "You think they'll negotiate? I think both sides are spending money." "That isn't an answer. No, it's a reason." Roger considered it. "What happens to the lender review? It continues independently, and Natalie's tracing almost finished." Roger nodded. "Then let's mediate." The first mediation session was scheduled for a Thursday. Roger arrived at 8:15 a.m. Kimberly and Eric occupied a separate conference room. Roger did not see her. For 9 hours, proposals moved between rooms. The mediator asked about the Worthington house. Kimberly wanted to remain there. Roger listened. He expected himself to resist. Instead, he asked Amanda one question. Can she afford it? Amanda looked at the numbers. That depends on refinancing, final debt allocation, and the buyout amount. Roger nodded. If she can refinance legally and buy out whatever interest is ultimately determined to be mine, I'm willing to discuss it. Amanda watched him. You don't want the house, I don't know. That was still true. The mediator carried the proposal to the other room. 40 minutes later, he returned. Kimberly wanted temporary possession to become permanent ownership as part of settlement. She also wanted a valuation date favorable to her position. Roger studied the worksheet. What about the HELOC? Still disputed, Amanda said. And K&W still disputed. Then we're trying to divide a house before we know what debts belong around it. Amanda nodded. That's one problem. The other problem was refinancing. Kimberly would need to qualify for a new loan large enough to remove Roger from the existing mortgage obligations and fund any agreed buyout. Her income was good, but the financial picture surrounding K&W was not. Contractor obligations remained. The duplex had not stabilized. Several debts were still unresolved. By 4:30 p.m., the mediator returned with another proposal. Roger read it. Too many assumptions, too many unresolved numbers. No. The mediator looked at him. Is there a counter? Not until we know more. Mr. Berry litigation is expensive. I know. You could spend tens of thousands fighting over amounts that may ultimately be smaller. Roger looked at the page. Or I could agree today to numbers nobody in this building can verify. The mediator said nothing. Roger slid the proposal back. No. At 6:07 p.m., the session ended. No agreement. Roger walked toward the elevators with Amanda. His shoulders ached. Was today useless, he asked. No, it feels useless. We learned what matters to Kimberly. The house. Yes. Roger pressed the elevator button. And we learned what she can't currently do. Refinance? Not under the proposed structure. The elevator indicator moved slowly downward. Roger rubbed his eyes. How much longer can this take? Amanda gave him the only answer she could. I don't know. Roger laughed once. Not because anything was funny. The elevator reached 6. Amanda's phone chimed. She glanced at it, then stopped. Roger noticed. What Amanda did not answer immediately. She opened the email, read, scrolled, then read again. The elevator reached 5. Amanda. She looked at him. Natalie's final tracing analysis. Roger straightened. Finished? She says yes. The elevator reached 4. Amanda stepped away from the doors. Hold on. She opened the attached summary. Roger watched her expression. It changed very little, but after months of meetings, he had learned Amanda's version of surprise. Her lips pressed together. Her eyes stopped moving. How bad, Roger asked. Amanda looked at the first page again. Worse than the preliminary numbers. How much? She did not answer. Instead, she walked toward a bench near the windows. Roger followed. Amanda sat and opened the detailed schedule. Colored rows separated sources. HELOC advances. savings withdrawals, joint account transfers, credit card payments, K&W residential partners, contractors, carrying costs. The structure was clean, the amounts were not. Roger sat beside her. What's the total? Amanda pointed. Roger read the figure, then read it again. The number associated with traced and potentially relevant financial activity was now above $70,000. Roger leaned back. 70 more than. All to K&W no. That mattered. Amanda enlarged the notes. Some amounts are clearly associated with the project. Some require legal classification. Some may remain ordinary marital spending. Natalie is not saying Kimberly owes you $70,000. Roger nodded. I understand. But the total pool we need to analyze is substantially larger than we thought. Roger looked at the elevators. The doors opened. Nobody got out. They closed again. For months he had been watching individual transactions. $4,850, $7,600, $11,400. Small enough to discuss separately. Together they had become something else. Amanda's phone rang. Natalie. She answered. I'm with Roger. Amanda listened. Roger watched her take notes. Yes. Pause. Understood. Another pause. Send the supporting schedule. Amanda's pen stopped. Are you certain about that? Roger looked at her. Amanda listened for another 20 seconds. Then, okay. We'll review it tonight. She ended the call. When Amanda turned toward him, Natalie completed the source tracing on the largest group of transfers, and she believes she can document the route with a much higher level of confidence than before. Roger looked down at the report. From where? Your home equity line. Savings, joint funds, to K&W in substantial part. Roger said nothing. Amanda closed the file. Go home. Roger almost corrected her. He did not have a home right now. Not in the way she meant. Amanda saw it in his face. To your apartment, she said. Sleep. We'll meet tomorrow morning. Roger stood. He walked alone into the elevator. On the ground floor, he passed through the lobby and stepped into the evening air. Columbus traffic moved along High Street. People left restaurants. A cyclist waited at the light. Somewhere across town, Kimberly was probably leaving mediation too. Roger wondered whether Eric had told her they were close. They weren't. The first mediation had failed. The lender had not finished. The house remained unresolved. And now Natalie's report had put a number on something Roger had spent months trying to understand. More than $70,000. He reached his Explorer. Before opening the door, his phone vibrated. An email from Natalie. Final tracing analysis. Roger downloaded it. The document contained 43 pages. He went directly to the last page. At the bottom was a table. Source, destination, supporting record, classification pending. Roger read the final figure one more time. Then he noticed a footnote beneath it. The amount was not the conclusion. It was only the money they could now follow. And according to Natalie, one remaining account had not yet been fully incorporated into the total. At 8:30 the next morning, Roger was back in Amanda's conference room. Natalie Brooks was already there. The 43-page report sat in front of each of them. Roger had read it twice. He understood the transactions. What he did not understand was what the final number meant for him. Natalie opened her laptop. Before we start, I want to make one thing clear. Roger nodded. $70,000 does not mean Kimberly owes you $70,000. I know. Natalie looked at Amanda. He actually does. Amanda almost smiled. Natalie turned the screen toward Roger. The number represents the total financial activity we've identified as relevant enough to trace or classify. Different portions will be treated differently. She highlighted the first group. HELOC advances. Then savings withdrawals. then transfers from joint checking, then payments associated with the revolving credit account. Some money flowed directly toward K&W Residential Partners. Some passed through accounts Kimberly controlled before reaching the LLC. Some paid contractors. Some covered carrying costs. Some could not yet be tied exclusively to the Westerville property. Natalie pointed to another column. This is why classification matters. Roger studied the labels. Potential marital expenditure. Potential dissipation issue. Business investment. Disputed authorization. Unclassified pending documentation. The categories were less satisfying than a simple answer. But simple answers were what had created the problem. Roger asked, "What about the account you said wasn't fully included?" Natalie opened another tab. The revolving credit account ending 4419. Roger recognized it immediately. We obtained more merchant detail. She scrolled. Construction materials, appliance purchases, a flooring supplier, hardware, one hotel charge, several restaurant charges. Roger looked at the last two categories. Natalie anticipated the question. "I am not saying those charges prove anything about the affair. Understood. They're simply part of the account history." Roger looked at the construction purchases. Maple Crest. Several delivery addresses correspond to the Westerville property. Roger leaned back. The total rose again. Not dramatically, but enough. Amanda spoke. "This gives us a much stronger accounting position for the next settlement conference." Roger looked at her. "What about the lender separate process?" "The notarized document's still under review. So we negotiate without knowing the final answer. We negotiate with what we know today." Roger had heard variations of that sentence for months. He was beginning to understand that legal disputes were rarely solved by one perfect revelation. They were reduced, one uncertainty at a time. The second settlement conference took place 3 weeks later. This time Roger saw Kimberly. She stood at the far end of the hallway beside Eric Lawson. For several seconds, neither moved. Roger had not seen her in person since she confronted him outside Amanda's office. She looked thinner. Her hair was shorter. Roger noticed those things automatically. Then he noticed something else. Jason wasn't there. Roger had not seen Jason since the night he walked out of the Worthington house. There had been attorney letters, business records, emails. His name appeared constantly. The man himself had vanished from Roger's physical life. Roger felt no need to change that. Kimberly looked away first. Roger entered his conference room. Negotiations began at 9:00. This time the numbers were harder to argue around. Natalie's report provided dates, sources, destinations, supporting records. Eric challenged classifications. Amanda challenged assumptions in Kimberly's proposal. The mediator carried spreadsheets between rooms. By noon, several issues had narrowed. By 2:00, they had tentative treatment for certain retirement accounts. By 3:15, Roger's business interest had become the next major issue. A valuation specialist had assessed his minority interest in the commercial inspection consultancy. The number was significant. Kimberly's side argued that part of the value developed during the marriage and had to be addressed. Amanda did not pretend otherwise. Roger listened. There was no secret clause that protected everything simply because he had worked for it. Marriage had financial consequences. So did divorce. Roger accepted that. The goal was not to leave Kimberly with nothing. The goal was to leave with numbers that could survive scrutiny. They discussed offsets, retirement assets, cash, business equity, property proceeds, potential reimbursements. The settlement began to resemble an engineering drawing. Every change moved load somewhere else. At 4:40, the mediator returned to the Worthington house. Kimberly still wants it. Roger looked at Amanda. Can she refinance? The mediator hesitated. Not under the current proposed debt structure. There it was. Roger felt no satisfaction, just clarity. Kimberly could want the house. The bank did not lend based on wanting. Income, debt, equity, credit. Those determined what was possible. What is she proposing? Amanda asked. The mediator explained. Kimberly wanted additional time to refinance after the divorce. Roger would remain connected to certain obligations temporarily. Roger shook his head before Amanda answered. No. The mediator looked at him. Let me finish. I'll listen. He did. The proposal gave Kimberly 12 months. Roger's name would remain attached during that period. If refinancing failed, the house would then be sold. Roger waited until the mediator finished. No. Why? Because I have spent months trying to separate myself from financial obligations I didn't knowingly approve. I'm not agreeing to stay attached to another one for a year. Amanda said nothing. She did not need to. The mediator wrote something down. What would you accept refinance before final transfer or sell? Simple. Verifiable. The mediator carried the answer away. 2 hours later, the response returned. Kimberly could not currently demonstrate the ability to complete the refinance under acceptable terms. The house would likely have to be sold unless circumstances changed before final settlement. Roger stared at the worksheet. For 11 years, Ashbourne Drive had been home. Now a financing ratio had decided what emotion could not. The negotiations continued into evening. By 7:30, an outline existed. Not final, but close. The house would be sold if refinancing could not be completed by the agreed deadline. Proceeds would be handled under the negotiated property framework. Roger's business interest would remain with him subject to valuation and offset. Certain retirement assets would remain with Kimberly. Personal property would be divided separately. Disputed K&W-related amounts would receive specific treatment based on documented tracing and final agreements. The lender-related obligations would be handled according to the lender's determination and settlement language. Roger read every line. No one lost everything. Kimberly would leave the marriage with assets. So would Roger. There was no cinematic punishment. No judge slamming a gavel and awarding Roger every dollar because his wife cheated. There were only consequences attached to evidence. That was enough. At 8:06, the mediator asked whether Roger could accept the framework. Roger looked at Amanda. Do the numbers work within the ranges we've discussed? Yes? Any unresolved exposure? The house. Roger looked down. Of course, the house. If Kimberly could not refinance, it would be sold. But another possibility existed. Roger could seek to retain it himself as part of the final division. Financially, he could probably do it. He had sufficient income, strong credit, liquidity. His business position was improving. The question was no longer whether Roger could keep Ashbourne Drive. It was whether he wanted to. That night he drove past the house. He did not stop. The porch light was on. Kimberly's Lexus sat in the driveway. From the street, nothing had changed. Roger slowed. He remembered painting the front door, Christmas lights along the gutter, Megan's daughter running through the sprinkler in the backyard, Kimberly asleep on the couch during a Sunday football game. Then another image. 2 wineglasses, Jason's shoes beside the stairs. Aren't you away? Roger drove on. At the apartment, he found an email from Mark Ellison. The consultancy's ownership restructuring was moving forward. Roger was being offered an expanded partnership position. He read the terms. For years, Kimberly had thought Roger's caution meant he lacked ambition. But Roger had never wanted fast money. He wanted durable things, work that held, investments he understood, a house he could afford, a marriage he believed was real. 3 of those remained. 1 did not. The next morning, Amanda called. We need your decision on the house before we finalize the next proposal. How long? A few days. Roger looked around the apartment. Beige walls, 4 plates, 1 unfinished shelf. He could keep Ashbourne Drive. He could walk back through that front door after the divorce. He could repaint, replace the bed, change the furniture, claim the house as proof that Kimberly had not taken everything. Financially, it was possible. Roger realized that was exactly why the decision mattered. Keeping something because you could was not the same as keeping it because you wanted it. He looked out the window. I need to go there. Amanda understood immediately. Arrange it through counsel. 2 days later, Kimberly agreed to be away for several hours. Roger drove to Worthington alone. At 2:14 p.m., he parked the old Ford Explorer in the driveway. He sat there for a moment. Then he walked to the front door. His key still worked. Roger stepped inside. The living room was quiet. The same staircase stood ahead of him. For the first time since 9/17, that Tuesday night, Roger entered the house without needing to leave quickly. Now he had to decide whether it was still something worth fighting to keep. Roger closed the front door behind him. The lock clicked. For a moment he stood exactly where he had stood the night his marriage changed. The living room looked almost identical. Same gray sectional, same oak coffee table, same floor lamp Kimberly had ordered online because she said the old one made the room look like a dentist's office. The wineglasses were gone. Of course they were. Roger looked toward the staircase. He could still place Jason there without effort. White shirt, one side untucked, hand at his cuff. Roger looked away. He had not come to reconstruct that night. He had come to decide what the house meant now. The afternoon sun fell across the hardwood floor. Roger walked toward the kitchen. His hand touched the edge of the granite island. He remembered installing the pendant lights above it. The electrician had quoted $900. Roger had done most of the preparation himself and paid him only for the wiring. Kimberly had complained that the job took 2 weekends. Then she loved the result. Roger opened one cabinet, coffee mugs, dinner plates, a chipped blue bowl they had owned since their first apartment. He closed it. Nothing in the house looked dramatic enough to contain the end of an 11-year marriage. That bothered him. He walked into the dining room. A shallow scratch crossed the hardwood near the wall. Roger knew exactly where it came from. 7 years earlier, they had moved the dining table to make room for Thanksgiving. Roger had lifted his side. Kimberly had dragged hers. The table leg cut across the floor. They had argued for 20 minutes. Later that night, Kimberly had found him trying to polish the mark. She laughed. "It's a floor, Roger. People are supposed to live on it." He had never fixed the scratch completely. Now he crouched and ran one finger across it. The memory did not make him angry. That was almost worse. Not every part of the marriage had been false. Roger knew that. He refused to rewrite 11 years simply because the final chapters were ugly. There had been good mornings, vacations, birthdays, inside jokes, Sunday grocery runs, nights when Kimberly fell asleep against his shoulder, years when Roger believed the woman beside him was building the same life he was. Those things had happened. So had Jason. Both could be true. Roger stood. He moved through the first floor. In the hallway near the kitchen, pencil marks remained on the inside edge of a doorframe. Emily, 7. Emily, 8. Emily, 9. His niece. Megan's daughter had insisted Roger measure her every Thanksgiving. The 9-year mark was slightly crooked because Emily had refused to remove her sneakers. Roger smiled. It lasted only a second. Upstairs, he stopped outside the bedroom. The door was open. Roger looked inside. The bed had been made. A different comforter covered it now. He did not enter. There was nothing in that room he needed to inspect. He continued toward the small office. Most of his files were gone. He had removed them during the first weeks. One empty shelf remained where the gray accordion folder used to sit. Roger stared at the space. For years, Kimberly had teased him about keeping paper. "Everything's digital now." Roger would answer, "Until you need the original." He thought about the notarized documents, the HELOC records, his father's land sale, the original closing statement, small decisions made years before anyone knew they would matter. Roger walked downstairs again. He entered the garage. His workbench remained against the far wall. Pegboard, clamps, screwdrivers, a cordless drill. On the bench sat a cabinet hinge. Roger picked it up. He had removed it from the kitchen months before, intending to replace it. Then Pittsburgh happened. The hinge had waited. Roger turned it over in his palm. He could keep this house. He could replace every hinge, paint every room, buy new furniture, tear out the bedroom carpet. He could make the place look completely different. Financially, it was possible. The settlement framework could be adjusted. His credit was strong. His income supported it. He could tell himself keeping Ashbourne Drive was a victory. Kimberly would leave. Roger would stay. The house would be his. He pictured that first night, walking into the living room alone, sitting on the gray sectional, looking at the staircase. Roger placed the hinge down. No. He knew. The certainty arrived without drama. He did not want the house, not because Kimberly had ruined it, because Roger no longer wanted his next 10 years organized around proving the previous 11 belonged to him. He pulled out his phone. Amanda answered. "You've been there? I'm here now. And sell it." Amanda was quiet. "You're certain, yes. You could retain it under a revised structure. I know, you don't need to decide emotionally." "I'm not." Roger looked through the garage toward the interior door. Keeping it would be emotional. Amanda understood. "All right, put it into the next proposal. I will." Roger ended the call. He remained in the garage another minute. Then he went upstairs one last time. Not to the bedroom, to the hall closet. He removed an old tool bag and a cardboard box containing photographs from before everything became digital. He did not open the box. He carried both downstairs. At the front door, Roger stopped. The room was quiet. He remembered Kimberly standing near the couch, barefoot, face drained of color. "Aren't you away at the time?" Roger had thought that was the moment his life split apart. Now he understood it had only exposed a split that already existed. Roger locked the door behind him. 2 days later, the revised settlement proposal went out. Kimberly did not agree immediately. Through Eric Lawson, she requested additional time to explore refinancing. The agreed deadline came. The financing did not. The house would be sold. A realtor named Susan McCarthy listed it the following week. Suggested price, $699,000. Roger reviewed the listing photographs. Bright kitchen, hardwood floors, 4 bedrooms, finished basement, mature landscaping. No photograph showed what had happened there. That was the strange thing about real estate. A house could contain 11 years and still be reduced to square footage. 2,740. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2-car garage. Worthington Schools. The listing went live Thursday morning. The first showing happened that afternoon. There were 6 more over the weekend. On day 12, an offer arrived. A married couple named Thomas and Rachel Bennett. 2 children. Pre-approved financing. Conventional loan. Reasonable inspection terms. Their offer was slightly below asking price. Susan believed it was strong. Roger reviewed the numbers with Amanda. Kimberly's side did the same. They accepted. The inspection found ordinary issues: an aging water heater, minor exterior caulking, 1 loose stair rail. Roger almost laughed when he read the report. After everything, the house itself had very little wrong with it. The sale moved forward. Closing was scheduled. Kimberly moved out first. Roger did not ask where she went. Her address would exist in legal records if needed. That was enough. 3 days before closing, Roger returned to Ashbourne Drive for the final walkthrough, associated with removing his remaining property. The house was empty. Without furniture, it sounded different. Every footstep echoed. Roger entered the kitchen. The cabinet with the bad hinge hung slightly crooked. He opened his tool bag. For a moment he considered fixing it. Then he smiled. Not his cabinet anymore. He closed it carefully. Near the dining room, the scratch in the floor remained. Roger left that too. In the hallway, Emily's pencil marks were still on the door frame. Roger took a photograph. That was the only picture he took. He carried his final box outside. Susan had installed a lockbox near the front door. Roger placed his key inside according to her instructions. Then he closed it. The small metal door snapped shut. 11 years reduced to a key behind 4 numbers. Roger walked down the driveway. He did not turn around. His phone rang before he reached the Explorer. "Amanda," Roger answered. "Everything okay with closing?" "That's not why I'm calling." He stopped. Months of experience had taught him to listen to her tone. What happened? The lender finished another stage of the review. Roger looked back at the house despite himself. "What does that mean?" "It means we have their findings concerning several disputed authorizations." Roger's grip tightened around the phone. "Did they decide?" "They've made determinations that matter to your position." Roger said nothing. Amanda continued. "I don't want to summarize a technical letter over the phone. Come to my office. When now, if you can." Roger looked at the lockbox, then at the Ford. "I can." He drove downtown. The trip took 24 minutes. Amanda was waiting in the conference room. A 6-page letter lay in front of her. Roger sat. She pushed it across the table. He read the first page, then the second. The language was cautious, institutional, precise. But the meaning became clearer with each paragraph. The lender had found material inconsistencies in the execution and verification of specific transactions Roger had disputed. The records supported his claim that certain authorizations could not be validated in the manner originally documented. Roger looked up. "Does this separate me from the debt?" Amanda placed one hand on the letter. "Not automatically, but it gives us something much stronger than we had yesterday." Roger looked down again. There was more. The review had not simply questioned signatures. It had examined contact verification, access records, transaction procedures, supporting information. Amanda turned to the final page. "This is the part I wanted you to see in person." Roger read the paragraph. Once. Then again. The lender's findings were strong enough to change how the disputed obligations would be treated while final resolution continued. Roger sat back. For months he had waited for someone other than himself to look at the records and say the inconsistencies were real. Now someone had. He felt no urge to call Kimberly, no urge to call Jason, no urge to celebrate. Amanda closed the file. "We still finish this properly." Roger nodded. "I know." Outside the conference room window, Columbus moved through another ordinary afternoon. Roger looked at the lender's letter. Then his phone vibrated. A notification from the title company. Closing preparations for Ashbourne Drive were complete. The house was almost gone. And now, at nearly the same moment, the debt Roger had spent months refusing to accept was beginning to separate from him, too. The lender's letter did not end the case. Roger had stopped expecting one document to do that. It did something more useful. It removed uncertainty. Not all of it. Enough. The lender's review found material problems in several disputed transactions. Certain authorizations could not be validated through the procedures reflected in the original records. Verification information conflicted with Roger's documented location on key dates. Other details associated with the advances did not support treating Roger's involvement as established in the way the account history had originally suggested. Amanda explained every paragraph. "This isn't a criminal judgment. I know. It doesn't decide what Kimberly did. I know. It doesn't decide what Jason did. I know. And we're not going to characterize it beyond what the lender actually found." Roger looked at the 6 pages. "What does it do?" "It strengthens our position that you should not be allocated responsibility for obligations you did not validly authorize subject to the remaining settlement terms and whatever final action the lender takes." Roger nodded. That was enough. For months he had wanted the truth separated from accusation. Now it was happening. Slowly. Procedurally. Without anyone shouting. Amanda tapped the letter. "This also changes the settlement discussion. How Eric can't reasonably treat the disputed debt as though your authorization is an uncontested fact." Roger looked toward the window. "Good." Amanda studied him. "That's it. What should I do?" Most clients would have stronger language. Roger folded the letter. Stronger language won't change the numbers. 3 days later, the house on Ashbourne Drive closed. Roger did not attend in person. Most documents had been prepared electronically. At 11:43 a.m., while Roger was inspecting a renovated office building near Easton, his phone vibrated. Title transaction complete. He waited until he was outside to open it. The message confirmed the sale. Roger looked at the final settlement statement. Commissions, taxes, mortgage payoff, closing costs, net proceeds, numbers, 11 years of Thanksgiving dinners, repairs arguments, Christmas mornings, and ordinary Tuesdays had become a set of line items. Roger expected grief. Instead, he felt lighter. Not happy, lighter. He locked his phone and returned to work. The final divorce negotiations accelerated after that. With the house sold, one of the largest uncertainties disappeared. Natalie's tracing report gave both sides a defined framework for disputed funds. The lender findings narrowed another issue. Roger's business interest had been valued. Retirement accounts had current statements. The marriage was becoming divisible. Amanda and Eric Lawson spent 2 weeks exchanging revised language. Roger rejected 2 clauses, accepted 4, asked questions about 7. Kimberly did the same through Eric. There was no final explosion, only revisions. One Tuesday afternoon, Amanda called. "I think we have it." Roger was underneath the canopy of a shopping center reviewing drainage damage. He stepped away from the contractor. "The settlement." "Yes. Final enough that you need to read it." That evening, Roger sat in Amanda's office for 3 hours. He read every page. The proceeds from Ashbourne Drive would be divided according to the agreed framework, taking into account the property history and negotiated offsets. Roger retained his interest in the commercial inspection consultancy. The valuation of that interest had been accounted for elsewhere in the settlement. Kimberly retained agreed retirement assets and personal property. Roger retained his own designated accounts and property. The K&W-related transactions received specific treatment based on documented tracing. The disputed lender obligations were addressed through language that reflected the ongoing lender determination, rather than pretending Roger had admitted responsibility. Nobody received everything they wanted. That was probably why Amanda considered the agreement workable. Roger signed the final page. His signature looked ordinary. Roger Michael Berry. He stared at it for a moment. After months of looking at signatures, he did not remember putting his name on something deliberately felt different. Amanda collected the pages. "You're almost done. Almost court approval." Roger nodded. "Of course. One more process." Meanwhile, Roger's professional life continued moving in the opposite direction. Mark Ellison called him into the conference room on Friday. 2 senior partners were there. The ownership restructuring was complete. Roger was offered an expanded partnership stake, not symbolic, real. He reviewed the documents over the weekend. The compensation structure was strong. The equity terms were reasonable. The responsibility would increase. Roger accepted. Mark shook his hand Monday morning. "About time." Roger smiled. 17 years is fast for me." Mark laughed. Roger did too. For the first time in months, it came easily. One detail from the Westerville dispute also resurfaced. During settlement preparation, Roger's documented recusal from the Maplecrest inspection had become relevant. The email was simple. "Owner documentation includes my spouse. Potential conflict. Please reassign." Mark's response had been equally clear. "Reassigned to Palmer. Do not access project further unless requested for administrative reasons." Roger had obeyed it. He had never inspected the duplex, never influenced its permits, never used company access to investigate Kimberly. At the time, the decision had taken less than 5 minutes. Now it protected 17 years of professional credibility. Roger thought about that often. The decisions that saved people rarely announced themselves when they were made. Sometimes they looked like boring emails. Sometimes they looked like old receipts. Sometimes they looked like a man refusing to make one angry phone call. The final court date arrived on a gray Thursday morning. Franklin County Courthouse. Roger wore a navy suit he had owned for 6 years. Amanda met him outside the courtroom. Kimberly arrived with Eric. Roger saw her. She saw him. Neither spoke. The hearing itself was shorter than Roger expected. Questions, confirmations, legal findings, signatures. The judge reviewed the agreement and addressed both parties. Roger answered when required. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. Yes. Then it was done. 11 years. Finished in less time than some commercial inspections Roger performed. Outside the courtroom, Amanda spoke with a clerk. Roger waited near a window. Kimberly approached. Eric remained several yards behind her. Roger straightened. Kimberly stopped. For a moment, neither said anything. Roger noticed the absence of his wedding ring on her hand. He had removed his months earlier. She looked tired. "You got what you wanted," she said. Roger considered the statement. "No." Kimberly's expression tightened. "You kept your business. Under the settlement. You made sure the house was sold. You couldn't refinance. You went through every account. Yes. You brought in accountants. Yes. You had the bank investigate everything. I disputed transactions I didn't recognize." Kimberly looked toward the courtroom doors, then back at him. Her voice lowered. "You planned all of this." Roger stared at her. He remembered the hotel room, room 417, a legal pad, 4850 written at the top. He remembered not knowing what K&W was, not knowing about Maple Crest, not knowing Jason's number appeared in the lender file, not knowing about the notarized documents. He had planned none of it. He had only refused to stop looking once the facts appeared. "No," Roger said. Kimberly waited. Roger's voice remained calm. "I kept records. That was all." He did not tell her she had underestimated him. He did not mention Jason. He did not repeat the email. Roger never checks anything. There was no reason. Kimberly looked at him for another second. Then she turned and walked toward Eric. Roger watched only long enough to make sure the conversation was over. Amanda approached. "You ready, yes?" They walked toward the elevators. Outside the courthouse, Roger stopped on the sidewalk. Cold air moved between the buildings. Amanda extended her hand. "Take care of yourself, Roger." He shook it. "Thank you. You made my job easier than most clients do. How you listened." Roger nodded. Then Amanda walked away. Roger stood alone. His phone vibrated. He expected an email from work. Instead, it was a notification from the title company. The final distribution from the Ashbourne Drive closing had posted. Roger opened his banking app. There it was. A number. Nothing more. A number where a house used to be. Roger stared at the screen. He thought about the first down payment from his father's land. The kitchen cabinets, the scratch in the dining room floor, Emily's height marks, the 2 wine glasses, Jason on the stairs, Kimberly saying, "Aren't you away?" Then he locked the phone. Across the street, people entered a coffee shop. A bus stopped at the corner. Someone honked. The city had no idea Roger Barry had just finished one of the worst chapters of his life. That suited him. He walked toward the old Ford Explorer. It was still 8 years old, still practical, still unimpressive. Roger opened the driver's door. Before getting in, he looked back at the courthouse. No triumph, no applause, no public humiliation. The system had not given him revenge. It had given him something better. A documented ending. Roger started the engine. His phone connected automatically. No messages from Kimberly. No messages from Jason. For the first time, Roger realized he no longer needed either of them to explain anything. The records had already said enough. He pulled into traffic. At the next red light, an email appeared from Mark Ellison. Partnership documents finalized. Roger glanced at it. Then the light turned green. He put the phone down and drove. The marriage was over. The house was gone. The money had been accounted for as far as the process could take it. And for the first time since that Tuesday night, Roger was no longer driving away from something. He was simply going home. The only problem was that he had not found that home yet. Roger found the house 4 months later. He had not been looking seriously. That was why he noticed it. A Saturday inspection had taken him north of Columbus to Delaware County. The work finished before noon, and instead of returning directly to his apartment, Roger took an older county road south. He passed cornfields, small subdivisions, and stretches of land that reminded him of the property his father had once owned. Then he saw the sign, "For sale." The house sat back from the road behind 2 mature maple trees. Single-story, red brick, attached garage, nothing impressive. Roger slowed the Explorer. Then he turned around. The realtor, Susan McCarthy, happened to be holding an open house. She recognized Roger immediately. "Well," she said, "I wasn't expecting to see you." "Neither was I." The house had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,860 square feet, built in 1987. The kitchen had been updated 6 years earlier. The hardwood floor in the living room showed minor wear. The basement was unfinished. The backyard bordered a line of trees. Roger walked through slowly. Susan knew better than to sell aggressively. She simply followed. In the basement, Roger looked at the foundation walls. Dry. No significant cracking. Mechanical systems were accessible. Electrical panel was properly labeled. The furnace was 7 years old. "Of course you're inspecting it," Susan said. "I'm looking. You've been looking for 15 minutes. Roger glanced at her. "That's how I look." Susan laughed. Roger walked outside. A small wooden deck faced west. Beyond the property line were trees. No neighboring house looked directly into the yard. Roger stood there. He heard wind moving through leaves. Nothing else. No traffic. No television. No footsteps above him. Quiet. Not the silence of room 417. Not the silence after Kimberly stopped answering questions. This was different. It asked nothing from him. How much Roger asked. Susan told him. Roger nodded. The number was comfortably below what he could afford. That mattered more now. 2 years earlier, Kimberly would have called the house too small. Roger understood why. No grand staircase, no oversized kitchen island, no formal dining room, no neighborhood designed to impress visitors. Roger looked at the trees again. "I want the disclosures." Susan smiled. "I thought you might." He made an offer Monday. They negotiated once, accepted Tuesday. Roger reviewed every page before signing. Of course he did. 41 days later, he received the keys. His first purchase for the house was not furniture. It was a new deadbolt. Not because he feared Kimberly, not because he feared Jason. Roger simply wanted to know exactly who had keys. The second purchase was a coffee maker. The third was a dining table. Oak. 6 seats. More than he needed. Megan noticed when she visited. "You planning a large family?" Roger tightened one table leg. "It's the size that fit." Sure, Megan had learned not to push. She knew enough about the divorce. Not everything. Roger preferred it that way. Emily came with her. Now 12, she walked through the house and immediately claimed the bedroom facing the backyard as hers. "You don't live here," Roger said. "I visit. That's different. Uncle Roger, you have 3 bedrooms." Roger considered the logic. "Fine." Emily smiled. Then she found the pantry. "You have no snacks. I moved in yesterday." That isn't an excuse. Roger bought snacks the next morning. Some habits survived everything. Others changed. He replaced the Explorer 6 months later. Not with a Range Rover, not with a Mercedes. He bought another Ford, newer, better safety equipment. Still practical. Mark Ellison stared at it in the office parking lot. Roger Berry bought a new vehicle. The old one had 164,000 miles. So you finally admit cars can die. They can become inefficient to maintain. Mark shook his head. Never mind. Roger's expanded partnership role changed his work. Fewer routine inspections. More client meetings. More responsibility for junior inspectors. More time reviewing complex reports before they went out. His income increased. His schedule improved. The strange part was that none of it felt like revenge. Kimberly did not need to know. Jason did not need to know. Roger did not buy anything to prove he had won. That word had stopped making sense. A divorce did not produce a winner. It produced an afterword. Roger concentrated on making his useful. The final lender resolution arrived nearly 7 months after the divorce. Amanda called him. Roger was sitting on the new deck drinking coffee. "Do I need to come downtown? No, that sounds promising." "It is." The lender had completed that relevant review and adjusted treatment of the disputed transactions consistent with its findings and the legal resolution surrounding the accounts. Amanda explained the details carefully. Roger listened. He asked 3 questions, then 1 more. When he understood, he said, "Okay?" Amanda laughed. "That's all. What else I don't know. Maybe celebrate." Roger looked across the backyard. A squirrel ran along the fence. "I think I'm done celebrating paperwork." "Fair." He thanked her. Before hanging up, Amanda said, "You handled this better than most people would." Roger looked at his coffee. "No. I handled it the only way I knew how. That was the point." The call ended. Roger sat outside another 10 minutes. Then he went inside and placed the final lender letter into a file cabinet. He did not frame it. He did not keep it on the desk. It was a record, nothing more. Kimberly appeared in his life only once after that, not physically. An email arrived 18 months after the night on Ashbourne Drive. The subject line contained 2 words, "I'm sorry." Roger saw it at 6:14 one morning before work. He did not open it immediately. He made coffee, showered, dressed. At 6:48, he sat at the kitchen table and opened the message. It was long. Kimberly apologized for this affair, for the secrecy around K&W, for financial decisions, for blaming Roger after being caught. She wrote that Jason had left the business relationship months after the divorce proceedings began. The Westerville investment had eventually been sold at a loss after outstanding obligations were resolved. Roger read that sentence without satisfaction. Kimberly wrote about loneliness, resentment, entitlement. Things she said she had understood only later. Roger read every word. He did not know whether every explanation was complete. For once, he did not need to know. At the bottom, Kimberly wrote, "You were never weak. I mistook your quietness for something I could ignore." Roger stopped. He read the sentence again. Then he closed the email. He did not answer that morning. For 2 days he considered whether silence would be cruel. On the 3rd evening he replied, "I received your message. I hope things go well for you." Roger. Nothing else. No accusation. No reopening, no invitation. He sent it. Then he deleted the draft copies automatically saved by his email application and went outside to finish staining the deck. Life became ordinary. That was the part Roger valued most. Sunday breakfast with Megan and Emily, work, coffee, a baseball game on television, neighbors named David and Carol who borrowed his ladder and returned it the same afternoon, a hardware store 10 minutes away. A favorite diner where the waitress eventually stopped asking whether he wanted black coffee. He did, every time. 2 years after the divorce, Roger hosted Thanksgiving. Megan brought sweet potatoes. Emily brought a boyfriend nobody had warned Roger about. Walter Berry, now 74, arrived carrying a bottle of bourbon and complaining about the driveway. "You should widen that." "Hello to you too, Dad." Walter looked around the house. "This yours bank owns part of it." Walter smiled. "Good answer." Later after dinner, Walter noticed the filing cabinet in Roger's office. "You still keep paper?" Roger looked at him. "Some." Walter nodded as if that settled something. It did. That evening, after everyone left, Roger stood in the kitchen. 6 dirty plates waited near the sink. A half-finished pie sat on the counter. Someone had left a sweater over a chair. The house looked lived in. Roger liked that. He carried the plates to the dishwasher. For no particular reason, he remembered 9:17 p.m., the front door opening, Kimberly freezing. "Aren't you away, Jason?" walking out of the bedroom. For a long time, Roger had thought that moment represented everything he lost. Now it looked different. It was the moment he stopped living inside a version of his life that depended on what someone else chose to tell him. The months afterward had not been clean. They had been expensive, slow, humiliating at times. There had been no brilliant trap, no dramatic revenge. Roger had done something far less exciting. He had stayed calm. He had preserved records. He had hired people who knew more than he did. He had refused to claim facts before he could prove them. He had accepted the consequences that legitimately belonged to him. And he had challenged the ones that did not. That was all. The quiet man everyone thought would simply absorb whatever happened had done exactly what quiet men sometimes do best. He waited. He watched. He documented. Then he acted when the ground beneath him was solid. Roger turned off the kitchen light. Outside, wind moved through the maple trees. He locked the door. One lock, one key on his ring. His house, his decision, his life. For the first time in years, nothing inside it required investigation. Betrayal often creates an immediate hunger to act, to confront, to expose, to make someone hurt as quickly as they hurt you. Roger felt that anger too, but his life changed because he did not let the worst night of his marriage choose his next move. He separated what he knew from what he suspected. He preserved evidence. He asked professionals for help. And when the truth emerged, he did not need to shout it. The documents were stronger than his anger could ever have been. Real life rarely gives us perfect courtroom victories or dramatic moments where everyone admits exactly what they did. More often, justice arrives through smaller things: a dated receipt, an old email, a bank statement, a decision made months earlier to do the right thing when nobody was watching. Being quiet does not mean being weak. Living modestly does not mean having little. And patience does not mean accepting disrespect. Sometimes patience is simply refusing to move until you can see where the ground is solid. If you were in Roger's position that night, what would you have done when Jason walked down those stairs? Would you have confronted them immediately, or could you have walked away and waited for the facts? Tell us in the comments. Your answer might help someone watching this who is facing a difficult decision of their own. And subscribe if you want to join us tomorrow, because the next story begins with a man being laughed out of a family meeting over an inheritance everyone believed was worthless, until one